ancient high-tech conspiracy, thorium conspiracy. He's got he's got ex-Nazi Frank Joseph speaks ancient black gods of America, I think.
It's one of those never met a conspiracy theory he didn't like. Right. That's what started the whole thing on the last hangout, right? That was, he was talking about conspiracy theories. He didn't back anything up. And somebody had asked him, well, you're a flat earther. And he just kind of, yeah. After that, it was like 7 hours of talking about flat earth now. So.
Yeah, he's into conspiracy theories all over the place.
Bible prophecy in the news. Flat Earth versus globe Earth. The end of controversy.
But it's so weird how people are so easily willing to put aside, science and things that we know we can demonstrate to just blind faith. I just can't grasp that concept.
I think a lot of it is political. I mean, once we started mixing science and politics, once we allowed the wall between science and politics to break down, this is what we invited.
Yeah.
Once we allowed for a system for scientists to basically become the pets of corporate interest and the pets of political interests directly, like that whole thing where, for years a whole shit ton of doctors were dancing and singing to the tune of Big Tobacco. Once we allowed stuff like that to happen, it's no wonder there's an entire population of people that don't trust science. It's no wonder.
Growing up, I remember learning about science and studying science. I mean, I thought I was going to be a scientist from how much I was reading, but there was no, well, your worldview can't account for this or your worldview can't account for that. It was just fucking science, and that was beautiful about it. No preconceptions are involved. This is what we've discovered. This is the evidence that demonstrates, our theories, and that was fun. I mean, that was.
Well,
now it's just got so overly complicated with, presuppositions and worldviews. Just stick to the facts, folks.
Well, in the case of this guy, there may be other causes. So, for example, it might be that I'm hearing myself echo.
Hang on, it's probably me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one might be that he's already a member of a worldview that's subject to, conspiracy theorizing by in-group and out-group effects already. So he's predisposed to believe. Once you swallow one thing, you can more easily swallow another. But then there's also the fact that, and he's in the room. I don't care if I'm talking about him. He might actually be somewhere on the schizoidal spectrum, which, but socially functioning, which, predisposes him to paranoia and conspiracy theories. We don't know.
Okay, now I don't have any type of paranoia. Now, as far as science goes,
that's what
it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. Okay.
Yeah, that's what Bill will say.
I found a white man on my front doorstep. I found a white man on my front doorstep the other day. I'm not paranoid.
Yeah, that's funny. Now, as far as science goes, okay, so science is mandated in the Bible that you guys hate. Okay, so, faith is also, there's also a definition of faith that's saying that faith is the evidence of unseen things. Okay, so now
faith is
we know,
hope for,
we know
unseen things are hoped for, but yeah.
The evidence of the unseen. All right, so now, so we know that unseen things happen, and we do know that the future is unseen. Okay, so there's two ways to look at that, and they're both correct. Okay, so you can switch them out as you like. So the future is unseen, so you plan, and you can control your future based on your planning. Okay, so to manifest the unseen thing that you want to happen in the future that has not been realized yet.
So the power of positive
thinking. As far as science goes, we know that air and atoms and all these things were unseen at one time. Okay, so the Bible mandates us to explore those things, to find the unseen thing, and then provide evidence to validate it, peer reviewed for everyone else. So without the Bible, you wouldn't have this process happen.
No, there's a lot of other countries out there that have science that don't accept the Bible.
Yeah. They all accept the Bible.
No.
Bible is
No.
worldwide.
Have you ever been over to an Arab country?
Yeah.
Where it's illegal to be anything but.
Yeah, and I mean the Arabs were one of the founders of
And-
astronomy.
And
When was the last time
the
you went
Quran,
to
the Quran was remixed from the Bible, and in the Quran,
The Quran
and in
is
the
a
Quran-
biblical remix. It's just like David Guetta did that.
exactly, and the Quran it mandates science as well.
So the Muslims wanted to drop some beats, and they just did a remix and just
It
sampling
came from the Bible.
Hey, wait, Muhammad, I've come to drop a sick beat. Check it out.
Yeah. I've got 2 scriptures in the Holy Book.
Allah.
Two scriptures and a holy
It's
book.
just
I'm the
rap.
whitest guy in here. You know this, right?
They're con artist rappers.
I've got 2 scriptures and a holy book.
Remixed it.
Come on, Drake, lay it down from us. Drop it.
I can't. I haven't rapped since the Fresh Prince days. There's no way I can do it.
Somebody put out some Skrillex, man.
Now, I normally don't do this, but I'm gonna break you off a piece of that remix.
Yeah, you are whiter than me. So I thought we were going to talk about. So what is this thing about? I wanted to hear because I'm not going to be doing this for very long. You guys are going to take over. What is it about? Oh God, I'm going to hate this question, but what is it about evolution that you disagree with?
I hate you.
I know it's a can of worms. Somebody had to do it.
You have to define it first so that you don't get upset about me talking about
Okay.
the reality
Fair
of
enough.
evolution.
No.
All right,
Actually,
fair
claim
enough,
we
fair
want you to.
Accepted theory of evolution. Okay. Now, when we talk about the speciation, what do you call it? Species for the adaptation of the superior race. We talk about that part. Or
All right,
we
so
talk about the Big
Well,
Bang.
let me define it. Let me define it. You asked me to define it. Let me define it. Evolution, I'm going to define as the modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent with modification. That's evolutionary theory. I'm sorry, not evolution, but evolutionary theory. Evolution, I'm going to define as a change of allelic frequency in a given species population from one generation to the next generation over time.
He said in a given species. See how you tried to change evolution to adaptation?
No.
You're not smart enough to use magic on me, my man.
No. You asked me to define it. I'm defining evolution. Define adaptation.
Evolution talks
Claim,
about
this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work if you can't interrupt me.
Of an amoeba being
Claim.
evolving into a banana.
Shut up! This isn't going to work if you keep interrupting me. You asked me for a definition. I will give you the definition. Then you said, "Oh, that's adaptation."
Okay, repeat
No, I'm going to give you a definition for adaptation because they're not the same thing.
Go ahead, repeat your definition.
Adaptation is the ability for a population to be accustomed to their environment based upon selective pressures by natural selection. Okay, totally different than evolution.
Okay, repeat evolution.
Evolution is a change of allelic frequency in a given population of species from one generation to the next generation over time.
You see how you try to say it like those old commercials that try to say it real.
What is your problem with the definitions? This is the accepted definition by everybody I've ever met, including
Not at all.
creationists.
That's adaptation. Your definition for evolution is the definition of adaptation. You just changed the word.
Again, no, they're two different things. Evolution has to deal with the change of alleles, the change of allelic frequency. Adaptation is how a population adapts to its environment from selective pressures.
Okay, so how does it? What changes that?
What is it about? What is it that you disagree with? Though I'm asking you. I gave you the definitions that you use across the board. Those are universal. I don't know anybody could disagree.
I'm gonna have to agree with your fake definition of evolution, and I fully agree with adaptation. Okay, then as far as evolution theory, what did you say that definition was for evolution theory?
Modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent with modification.
Descent with modification, meaning that a cow is related to a bird, right?
Yes, all things are related.
Okay. All right. So that's what I disagree with.
Okay.
And the whole Big Bang theory is.
I didn't mention anything about Big Bang. Big Bang is cosmology, totally different subject.
Yeah.
I've
seen evolutionists steer away from that. Man.
No, I could talk about cosmology too.
Same face.
It's two different subjects. We're talking about biology. If you want to talk about cosmogony, I'll change the topic to cosmogony.
Cosmology.
Biology.
No. I want to. What do you want to talk about? I will talk about Big Bang
No,
cosmology.
we stick with biology. We stick
Okay,
with
biology. Okay,
All right,
because
now,
they're two different things.
Your problem in the evolution theory and evolution that you changed the definition for to change it to adaptation, right? Is that
no, they're two different things.
You
Swear to
changed
God,
it.
it's like you
You
never heard a
changed
word you said.
evolution theory, saying that all things are related through common ancestors, is ridiculous. And now
That's assertion. Why?
here's a problem that you guys can never answer, but you
Go
just
for it.
you just make up with that bullshit.
Go for it.
So it's the Cambrian explosion. That's
What
what
about
you can never answer. That.
What's the question about it?
Never have an answer for it.
What's the question?
I said the Cambrian explosion.
That's not a question. That's a time period. There was hundreds of millions of years ago. What's the question about the Cambrian
Can't explain it.
explosion?
Explain how you
Slow
go
down so I can go
from
Google it.
a single cell organism to 50
That
million.
wasn't the Cambrian
That
explosion.
happened in the Cambrian explosion. You don't
Yeah.
even know what you're talking
That wasn't.
about.
That was long before the Cambrian explosion. Cambrian explosion was 500 million years ago.
Right. Okay.
So what's
Go
your
ahead.
question?
I want you to explain where 500 million species came about in
I didn't say 500 million
a
species.
There
relatively
were
short
500 million
period of time.
species.
Yeah, you're confusing years with species. I mean, this is like ridiculous.
I'm not confusing years with species at all. My question
Okay,
is,
so ask your
explain-
question.
Okay,
Cambrian
if you listen
explosion.
long enough, you can hear the question. Okay,
Go ahead.
explain
Long enough you can hear the ocean.
how. See how these people talking? Explain how you go from a single cell organism to 50 million species in a
That's
relatively
not the
short
Cambrian
amount of time.
explosion. Ask
You
me
didn't
the
allow
question
me
about
to
the
finish
Cambrian explosion.
The Cambrian explosion
You
did
didn't
not
allow
start
me to
with
finish the
single-celled
question.
organisms.
No.
You
Yeah,
did
Cambrian
finish it,
explosion-
you numpty.
You didn't allow me
Single-celled
to
organisms
finish the
came about long before the Cambrian explosion.
Yeah,
They
they
went
were
to
already
multicellular organisms long before the Cambrian explosion.
Yeah, they're already multicellular long before the Cambrian explosion. So I don't understand your question.
I didn't say the single cell organism was part of the Cambrian explosion.
You said explain the Cambrian explosion. Now I'm asking you, what do you
I
mean
said
by explain the
explain-
Cambrian explosion?
Organism to 50 million
If
species.
you listen to
You
the
numpty.
entire question without interruption, you can
Okay,
have
I will
say the
do
entire
that.
question.
The same courtesy
on
you
the
extended
question.
me.
Get some clarity and then respond.
Say the entire
My
question.
question to you is a very simple question.
Start it now.
How did you get from a single-celled organism to 50 million species in a relatively short amount of time, which is defined by the Cambrian explosion?
Okay.
Evolution.
Not a single-celled organism is the Cambrian explosion. The
Okay,
50
the
million
answer is
species
evolution.
in 2 seconds.
Well, and the secondary answer was there were multicellular organisms before the Cambrian explosion. So
Yeah,
your
he's
question
not-
is
Oh my
nonsensical.
God.
He's not understand that, but the answer is evolution. Next question.
See?
Yep.
You can't never answer.
I just
Just
answered
didn't
it.
answer it.
That is the answer. You don't like the answer? I can't help you.
You can't answer.
You have to ask a little bit better questions to get better
I have to get some
answers.
breakfast too. So you guys imagine whatever stuff.
Do you know what
You-
the Cambrian? Wait,
Are you trying to ask?
I'm
let me
more
see if I
well
can
versed on
clarify
this on this topic than I am on flat Earth. You really
well,
fucked
be my
up.
guest, so are we. What is it about
Which
Cambrian
tells you how
explosion?
sadly you're
Yeah,
going in
you
this.
didn't even know
I'm
how
going
far.
to get some breakfast.
You didn't even know when the Cambrian explosion was. And what happened was, in pre-Cambrian forms, they were mostly soft body. They didn't fossilize well. So what we're seeing is a change from soft body to more hard body fossils. So a lot of the animals prior to the Cambrian explosion didn't fossilize very well. So that's where we see this birth of all these different types of things. It also was a time period where a lot of these animals were still diversifying, right? Animals and fungi and God damn it, what's it before, just before the plants? I can't remember. But anyways, there was a lot of diversification going on. I'm getting a weird thing on my mic. What the fuck? Hey, hang on. Okay, that's better. Do you guys understand this question?
Well, it's a nonsensical question.
Right.
Is,
That's what
are you talking about the Ediacaran? time period?
Mm,
Isn't it Edicarian?
Uh,
Cambrian? Am I saying it right?
Icarian was like 600 million years ago, right? That's
I
before.
just know.
Yeah, that's in the Proterozoic.
Isn't it Ordovian or something?
I don't remember. There's a whole bunch of different periods in that, and I don't remember the
I
names.
stumped him already. His answer was evolution.
No, the Cambrian time was just you had a different bunch of life forms show up over a very short time.
Right, because that's where a lot of the major phyla,
Geologically speaking, it's still-
That's where most of the first fossils show up.
Right, because that's where hard bodies were starting to be fossilized. Prior to that, they didn't have the animals didn't fossilize very well. So we see this huge,
Stop it.
explosion of things.
Please stop it.
That's your answer. What do
The
you?
only reason you have fossils, the only reason you have fossils is due to the flood, worldwide flood.
There's no evidence of the flood. Okay.
There was no such evidence, no such flood.
Yeah, demonstrate there's a flood.
Have we ever found a humanized, a fossilized human remain next to a dinosaur fossilized?
Ever?
Fossil?
Of course.
Have you ever found a humanized
No.
fossil, a hominid fossil below a dinosaur fossil?
Or below the KT boundary?
Or in the same layers of trilobite?
Wait. Are you saying we have found a human fossils below the KT boundary?
Of course.
Could you please cite me for that?
Huh?
I would love a citation because we've asked Ronnie that for about a year now, 2 years. I don't know how long it's been. He's never been able to give us a citation for that. He has asserted the same thing. So can you please find me the citation for that?
Yes, we will continue once you have provided a citation.
I will wait.
You're going to continue regardless.
No.
Google that shit, yeah.
No, I shall not.
We're going to wait. Yeah, we're going to wait until you. Yeah, exactly. We're not moving on until I get the citation because that's critical. Because Ronnie has a certain sort of. He has actually said the same thing. We found humanized bones below the TAT boundary, and I have never been able to find a source on that. So please cite your source on that.
I'm happy to wait.
Yeah, we can wait.
Okay.
So while he's doing that, I'm going to go make some breakfast. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
I'm going to play some holding music.
Do not let him move on.
I'm going to play that Jeopardy soundtrack.
Yeah, don't let him move on until this point is done.
Mm-hmm. Stumped him on the Cambrian explosion, so he want to move the goalpost.
No, we're waiting for you to prove us wrong on the Cambrian. I'm not prove us wrong, but
I'm
the
not an
citation.
archaeologist. I don't even know how to look up the articles and look up the digs.
We can wait.
It's not archaeology, it's paleontology, but we
Yeah,
won't go there.
paleontology. I don't even know how to look up the
Yeah,
digs.
paleontology. Yeah, that's the word I meant.
Goddamn Google, you slow today.
When you want to talk about
I'm
archaeology,
not Googling anything.
when
I don't
when
know how to
when,
look it up.
when you want to talk about archaeology, I'm your guy. That's what I do.
I don't need your archaeology. Thugger,
Did you just say that you don't even know how to look it up?
Yes, I did.
So you don't know how to Google a citation? So you're saying something that you can't even cite?
He doesn't need
So
to
you're
know
saying
your
something
damn
without
science.
evidence, which means you're pulling it out of your ass.
Right.
He don't need your damn
Okay,
science.
so I will now accept your retraction, and then we can
No,
move on.
no retraction. No, sir.
So why? No, hold on a second. Let's just go back. Why do you think that's true? What do you base that evidence on? What evidence do you base that opinion on?
Okay.
So what evidence would you base that claim on, other than just pulling it out of your ass?
Well, man, that's the same question as asking me to cite a reputable.
No.
Actually, no, we're not even asking that. We just want to know where you got this information from.
Where did you get the idea from? Is what I'm trying to say. Is where does this idea come to you from?
Okay, so the concept, right?
Yeah.
Comes from, the flood is how you have these layers of fossils. Okay, you're unaware of this and you reject it. Okay, so me knowing this, that will tell me that there's also human remains in these layers of fossil layers. I mean.
Okay. So do you know of anywhere that we've ever found that?
Man, I just said if I was aware of it, I could easily cite it. I don't know.
No. This is fine. I'm not trying to get at you here. I'm just making a particular point. So you have a belief that we should find that. That's your model, which is fair enough. That we should find human remains below the KT boundary, if the biblical flood is true. Is that a better way of putting your point?
let me
God
hold
damn
on.
it.
Let me
By the
define
way, guys,
something else.
guys, just FYI, I got a fucking another strike because of the ISS feed on that last video.
You're joking.
Fuck! No, an 8-hour video. 8-hour video, the whole monetization screwed.
Wait a minute. How
That's
can they?
ISS.
You can
I just got a
remove
message from
it.
YouTube.
Remove that.
But that doesn't
5-minute
that
piece.
doesn't make it. Would you shut up a fucking minute? That doesn't make any
Fuck.
sense. That doesn't make any sense. NASA specifically wants this
It's
stuff
because
disseminated.
but it's Bulgaria. It says doesn't allow it,
Well, but that's
so it's a copyright.
But
It's not a strike against my channel, but it ruins the monetization for it.
but
There's an 8-hour hangout of monetization. But
But that's
bullshit.
ridiculous. How can Bulgaria turn around and say we're not going to give you for free what NASA gives us for free?
Well, yeah, but
I
my things are monetized, right? So because
No,
I had
no, I
ISS feed in there, I can't
understand
monetize.
I understand that, but you know the basis of them taking your monetization away is presumably that you're taking something that's copyrighted. NASA specifically doesn't copyright any of their stuff.
That's what I thought.
I
Well,
would say
wait.
make an appeal. Yeah.
I'm not going to appeal.
Well, it's copyrighted by the nature of production, right? I mean, when you're saying they
It's
don't
blocked
copyright,
in
it means
Bulgaria.
I don't
So-
understand what that means.
Anyway, we should do this.
Well,
so
I'm
we
gonna.
can-
Wait.
I will take that part out and re-upload it, but I lose all the monetization I've had so far.
I don't understand what that means, Hogtie. What does that mean?
Well, just real quick, not to divert the whole hangout. So I want to talk with KT boundary real quick. No, it's just as soon as you produce something, like you don't have to make an effort to copyright it. You don't have to go to some government registry or something. I mean, it's yours when you produce material. Then it's your material. It's you hold the copyright. And yeah, anyways, you just don't need to register it. I mean, I think some people think that you have to register it or you have to be making money off of it, and neither of those things are the case. Your works are your works.
But
Yeah,
NASA specifically.
But
Okay. Well, anyway.
the point being is, don't play videos in my Hangouts anymore.
Yeah, there you go. Right, the KT boundary, just real quick, because I heard somebody say that Ronnie had made the claim that they found human remains below the KT boundary, and wondered, how long ago was that? It was almost exactly 2 years ago. It's now a little after 2 years ago, on the Magic Sandwich Show, when I had made the claim that we don't find humans below the KT boundary, amongst some other claims, and Ronnie's witty response to it was to say that Hogtie is 100% completely wrong about everything he just said. Aaron Rod challenged him on that and said, well, one of the things Hogtie said was that humans were below the KT boundary. Are you saying that's wrong? So Ronnie has actually never said the words, we found human remains below the KT boundary. But when Aaron pressed him for, either admit that claim was true or provide proof that it was wrong, he just stammered and changed topics and went all Ronnie. But I've not heard him actually make that claim.
It went all Ronnie.
He did. Well, that was the episode he rage quit twice. He came in, challenged Aaron to a debate. He was on the show to discuss this stuff with him, and then he rage quit after only a few minutes. And then he actually rejoined the Hangout
And
so
rage
he
quit
could
again.
rage quit again.
I remember listening to that one, and what it sounded like to me, like he was just in the middle of a run, and he couldn't stop.
But he actually literally announced at one point when DPR was saying, well, just hang on a second. And he goes, and then stop. He goes, I can't stop. Yeah,
I'm almost there.
if I stop, my mother will die.
If I hit the brakes, the bus blows up.
All right, I'm going to go lay down because I can just see this conversation is going to go nowhere real fast. When this video finally I can download it, I'll have to re-upload it, and then maybe people just watch it again or something. Not the whole thing, but I mean just load it once. But yeah, it's kind of shitty that 5-6 seconds of fucking ISS footage will demonetize something. But I keep telling people, don't play videos for this very reason. You can't play videos in Hangouts when they're monetized.
This doesn't make any damn sense at all. This
I know,
is
but better
NASA.
safe than sorry. Just don't do it.
It's NASA, though. It's like, I don't know.
So I would still like to see any sort of reason for you to claim that there are humans below dinosaurs.
But
Below the
he is
KT
making.
boundary.
He is actually saying, again, I've heard only the last 3 or 4 minutes, but delightful. It's just, again, he's scorekeeping, and oh, you guys are moving the goalposts, or whatever. I hope he refines the questions a bit. That the one point I heard there, where he says that. What was his question about? Well, Cambrian explosion. Well, that's not a question. And he says, explain how they went from singular cell organisms to, was it 50,000 species or whatever it was he said. And then Van had said, well, no, there were already multicellular organisms before, and he said, well, I'm not saying single-celled organisms to, 50,000 species or whatever. And then when asked to state his question clearly, he said, how could it go from single-celled organisms to 50,000, whatever the figure was, species in the period known as the Cambrian explosion? Like, okay, well, are you asking that or not asking that? So let's sharpen our questions a bit.
Man, the question was so clear.
Yeah.
I'm saying the period of the Cambrian explosion.
Of which there were already multicellular organisms.
Okay.
Before.
Mm-hmm. And then that's why it's called an explosion, because a larger number of species developed over a relatively short amount of time. So all the time before the Cambrian explosion is not the Cambrian explosion. So I'm telling you to tell me how you got from a single-celled organism to the Cambrian explosion.
Okay, that's a much different question than you asked.
Yeah.
That's the exact same question I asked 3 times.
No, it's no.
It's incredibly not.
You understand
no.
that
This time you said, how did you get from single-celled
Your
organisms
answer
to
was
the
evolution.
beginning? No, that's hold right there. 2 things. This time you asked, how did you get from single-celled organisms to the Cambrian explosion? That is, to the beginning of the Cambrian explosions. That's a very different question. And the other thing is, you were given. So I was listening outside. You were given about 4 different answers to the question, and you immediately went to. Steve had said, "Well, evolution." Next question. All you listened to was Steve saying evolution, and you find that answer unsatisfying. I find it unsatisfying too. Is probably a more elaborate explanation that would answer your question. But the fact that other people came in and said, oh, well, here, I can, sure, I can answer your question. If you really want to know this stuff, I can tell you the answer to this. And you ignored everybody who was talking just so you could latch on to Steve saying evolution, next question. Like, are you here to ask questions or just, what are you doing?
No, it's like what I said earlier, Hogtie. He knows just enough.
Are you talking to me?
He knows.
Okay, so I was attending to some food in the kitchen. Okay, so now when you say something about trying to compare my presence to trolling or something, is that what you're trying to do?
I love it. I swear to God, man. It's
okay,
like
so I was invited over here.
If you pour
challenged
alcohol
to a biology discussion by Steve. So what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So he has to change the question instead of answering the question I was asking. He has to just change the question to something else so he can act all indignant about it. That's unfortunate.
That's right.
I mean, I wasn't in here. I said I was tending to some food in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you're sitting here talking crazy while I was gone, and I didn't hear the whole question.
Okay, well then you can ask me to repeat the question instead of making up your own question and deciding you're going to answer that one.
Okay, what is the question?
I'm asking when you ask a question, are you actually looking for an answer, or are you looking for like the least satisfying answer so you can sort of just repeat it and go, well, that one guy said evolution, therefore they're all dumb.
Oh,
gosh. Is that a real question? I'm looking for reality, dude.
You wouldn't know it if you found it.
Okay, well then ask a question, and
I've already found it.
Actually,
from my paradigm. So since I've had this evolution debate 17 million times, it's just another time. I'm just, you know what I'm saying, just bored and talking to some guys that think they know something.
Well, you've had this discussion how many times, and you didn't know the definition of any of these things and confused evolution with adaptation? I'm kind of
confused. I didn't confuse
there.
Evolution with adaptation. You changed the definition of evolution to adaptation with different wording.
I distinctly gave you 2 very distinctly different definitions for 2 very distinctly different words.
That's great.
So what is adaptation, if you would like to explain it to us?
Man, you already gave the definition, bro.
No, what is your definition? What is that? You don't like my definition, so what is adaptation?
I do love your definition. That's why I said I agreed with your definition of evolution that you changed to adaptation. And adaptation exists. Okay, so then you said evolution theory is much different than evolution. You said evolution theory is that all things are related with common ancestors, all the way down to a single common ancestor.
You're reading a little more than what I actually said, but I actually said for evolution, I didn't mention the word adaptation at all.
Yeah, of course not. You just use fancy words that define the exact same thing as adaptation.
You and your $5 words, Steve. I swear.
Yeah, I actually I said it has to do with a change of allele frequency. Now, do you know what an allele is?
Nope.
Okay, then I'm done with the conversation.
Or pick a different topic or something. That's go ahead. Sorry, you're about to say something.
Yeah, the world is the way we want it because we're just that darn charismatic.
Good blueberry waffles.
Toaster or made from batter?
Toaster.
I'm doing both.
You're putting batter in the toaster? That's not a good idea.
No. I made from batter and then froze them.
So lay a toaster sideways, you can toast pizza that way.
Putting batter.
It all falls off. I've tried it.
Oh.
God damn it, Van! You're why they have to put 9 miles long worth of disclaimers on everything. Warning: putting batter in the toaster will fuck up your shit.
And they say it just like that too on the side.
Right. So he used the same tactic.
That's right.
He used the same tactic here.
That's right there under the. Shut up. That's right there under a long list of fucking. Don't come crying to us. There.
How are y'all allowed to speak and I'm not? Hold on a second.
Well, it's called when I'm in the middle of a sentence, step off.
Okay, so you got the same tactic that he used with the other debate.
Oh,
right?
Shut up.
Which is
when I'm in the middle of a sentence.
If you're not intelligent enough.
Hey, did you grow up in
information?
Hey, don't be so damn country. When I'm fucking in the middle of a sentence, step off.
And don't call this a debate. These are not debates. I was explaining to you
I'm
things.
talking about the
Don't call them
discussion.
debates.
Discussion, okay? The discussion.
Yeah, well,
and at that particular point,
I'm saying you use the exact same tactic in this discussion. This is the only thing that you're using. This is the only strategy that you're using.
No, that's
you're
not
saying
true.
that you're not smart enough to know that evolution exists. You're not smart enough to know the other debate either. You're not smart enough to know that
the worst thing about it.
Can I answer this one?
Hang on. The worst thing about it.
That's not a good strategy.
The worst thing about it is that the worst thing about it is that you are smart enough to know better. You've simply dug into a position because you're too fucking lazy to actually look up the facts and the science. That's the problem.
I don't even know that's lady. It's.
Oh, I do.
I used earlier the word cognitive dissonance in a massive.
Not cognitive dissonance at all. You're not.
I was in the middle of a sentence that time.
Comes from sloth.
You're not providing any evidence.
Okay, so anyway, as I was saying earlier, he said the word cognitive or the phrase cognitive dissonance.
That's when you reject evidence,
and it was incredibly out of context. This, I think,
cognitive dissonance is when you
does not
reject
want to believe
evidence.
it. Will you stop talking over people?
No, you keep putting words in my mouth.
Okay, we'll
keep
just
explaining
do it this way.
cognitive dissonance. Hang on.
We'll just do it this way. When cognitive dissonance is when you get information that conflicts with information that you have, and instead of trying to comport those information or figure out which ones are correct, you reject one arbitrarily or based upon your personal feelings.
I'm not sure that's what cognitive dissonance actually is.
I thought it was when you're holding two contradictory beliefs.
I think it's a possibility that I got rattled and just mangled that.
Yeah, no. You know, Van, it was a workable definition of confirmation bias.
There we go. That's what I like about Hogtie. He's positive.
And holding two competing different beliefs is called queer reasoning.
Well, double think.
Yeah. And the thing we're getting at, Clem, it's what we're trying to do is qualify your understanding to make the claims that you are. And one of the things that's become very, very clear, and we can just use the whole kind of motif that's gone over here, is when we've said, okay, you claim that they found humans below the KT boundary. When we examine your claim, all you can do is say, well, I believe in the flood, therefore it should all be mixed up, therefore we should see this, not that we actually have. So what you've done is you've made a false claim by what you stated, because you cannot provide evidence to say we have found this thing that we should expect. You're kind of creating a predictive model to say this is what we should see, which was where I was trying to help you and take you to. But what you actually did was you made a claim. You made a full-blooded assertion that this has happened. When we examine it and we actually question you on why, then you can't back that claim up. You have no evidence to support that claim. Is that not fair?
Okay, now that's a good one. Okay, so now this is the first time that you have seen lack of evidence for a question. Now, all right, now as far as the model that you were trying to lead me to, I appreciated that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. That's actually what I meant to say, because I've never witnessed it myself. So now this is what we expect to see. This is what we expect to see, and from my paradigm, these things are highly regulated to where anything that tries to that leads too much credence to the Bible is suppressed, unless great support unleashes that information.
Okay, can I just counter that point very quickly? Because I do want to make a point here, because you're now straying into kind of my specialized area of what I feel comfortable talking about. And I'm always happy to say where I'm not comfortable talking about stuff. Is if you look at where the investment into an awful lot of archaeological research comes from, it does come from theist-backed environments. The Biblical Society of Paris, for instance, being one of the biggest ones. They're the people that helped preserve the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're the people that helped with the translation. They came up with the infrared way of actually reading some of the scrolls without unrolling them, and came up with some very, very clever things, and fully supported and done in a very prescribed methodology of archaeology. So to say that that would be suppressed because it may not support, and some of the stuff that's come from the Dead Sea Scrolls does not support the biblical position, and some of it does.
Well, even on the issue of
does that society, who you say, Paris, whoever?
Paris Biblical Society.
Oh, say it again.
Paris Biblical Society. They've got a French name, which I can't.
Okay.
Bibliothèque de Paris, I think, is the proper name for them.
All right, now, have you seen them fund paleological digs?
No, because they're an archaeological society. It's a different. So it's a bit like saying why isn't the Royal Society for Science heavily investing in modern dance?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, well, are there any biblical organizations heavily funding paleological digs?
There are an awful lot of paleontologists who are theists.
I know. I'm talking about the funders, my man.
No, most most digs in that subject are normally funded by universities. That's where
including religious-based universities.
Yeah. John,
Notre Dame.
Yeah, clean it up the best you can. Yeah.
But
I'm just there, bro. That there's not enough funding for the biblical perspective in the paleological arena. So therefore, whenever you talk about providing evidence for
have you lost your mind?
Just let them finish.
Boundary, then you're not going to find it because it's being suppressed.
Okay. See that's what. Oh, go ahead, Ben. Yeah.
Mine's gonna be pretty quick. Have you lost your mind? There's not enough funding. Do you not realize that the people who own the bakery in Oregon who outed that lesbian couple on Facebook got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars from radical evangelicals?
And never paid their fine.
And never paid their fine.
They kept it themselves. Yeah. Well, I don't know that it doesn't necessarily fund research, but I mean, yeah. I mean, we don't control the funding. If that's your concern about who gets the funding, we don't control the funding. If
that's not my concern. My concern is that I'm expressing to you clearly that there is not funding for the biblical perspective on a vast level in the paleological arena. That's why.
Okay, can I respond?
It just came from me asking you the questions about it because I don't know. You just told me there wasn't.
No.
No.
You tried to clean it up by saying some of those universities are biblical-based universities. They also have an interest to cover things up. The Catholic Church also has an interest.
No one told you that there was no funding for the biblical-based perspective. You made the claim there's no funding for the biblical-based perspective, and my response was to say, well, even if that's the case, we don't control the funding, and surely if evangelicals wanted the truth of the inerrancy of the Bible out there, then they can fund things themselves. They've got money too. So, but then you took that to mean me telling you that there's no funding for the biblical-based perspective. But let's move past that, because the thing is, what we're trying to do, I'm wondering if you're doing the same thing. Like, let's take a single question like this: are the human remains below the KT boundary? How would we? I mean, some people say there are, some people say there's not. How would we go about finding the truth of that? Because when we ask you,
are you saying that there are?
Let me finish. I think we should let you finish when you're saying something. I think we should let you finish when you're saying stuff, and I think you should let me make this point, because I've tried about 4 times now. Well, I'm telling other people in the room, let's give the guy a little bit more room. It's everybody else against him. But by the same token, you can't jump in and interrupt somebody else when they're talking, because I'm saying when we are wondering about this. Let's say that everyone in this room is wondering. I wonder if they ever do find humans below this KT boundary. For clarity, the KT boundary is the layer that has a little thin bit of iridium in it, a material you generally only find in like asteroids, and it's believed to be the remains of the asteroid that hit the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago. And you find big dinosaurs below it and no big dinosaurs above it. Below it, you don't find any large mammals, certainly no humans. So if somebody says, well, no, that's not true, we actually do find humans below that boundary, that 65 million year boundary. And so how do we go about finding the truth of it? When you claim that they have found humans below, your claim is they have found human remains below the KT boundary. Okay, well, can you back that up?
Please don't my claim, man.
What?
I revised my claim.
So
aggravating when you hear only what you want to hear, man.
Okay, you don't need to be a jackass about it. What you need to do, I paused to say, you've revised your claim. You've revised your claim. So tell me what your new claim is.
I said this is what we should find.
Oh, you're saying so
the flood.
Find. Okay, so you've just.
Okay, I will personally accept that as you retracting your earlier statement.
Yeah, he's retracted it, and that's fine. I respect that. That's fine. So, to your knowledge, we haven't found human remains below the KT boundary, but you have an explanation for it. I'm fine with that. Whatever. I know it's quiet. I don't know where to go from that.
Let's talk about the flood since you brought it up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to ask one qualifying question for claim on the flood. When do you think it happened?
Let me see here.
Give me a 1,000-year date range. I'll happy with that.
Between 36 and 4600.
Okay, so you're what I call an old Earth floodist.
What?
Well, hold on. 36 to 4600 years ago or BC?
BC.
36 to 4600 BC?
That's why I said he's
BC, dude.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah. No. I understand where he's coming from. Yeah. I mean that's quite unusual because most people put it sort of around 2400 BC. That's what most of your brothers in Christ claim that believe in this. So why do you feel it's older than most of the chronologies that are out there?
Let me see here. Okay, let me see here. 2800, 2100, 2400, they say.
Yeah, 2400 BC is normally around the date that they put for the flood. It's the most common one I tackle.
Okay, well, I would just have to see their calculations because that sounds about right too.
Okay, so when do you think we started writing?
I think we started writing. Let me see here. It's still going to be in that short time frame. I would say. Let me see here. Let me readjust my whole timeline right quick. Hold on a second.
No worries.
500, 1,000, 4,500. Okay, so that would have to be a little bit before 4,500, based on that 1,000-year time range. I just gave you about the flood.
Okay, so again, you're saying is that 4,500
years, maybe 500 years before the flood, something like that.
Okay, so that's basically 4,500 BC or 2,500 BC, because obviously we're plus 2,000 just to keep the math easy.
Well, if we go by what I said earlier, which was what I'm liable to stick to, right?
No, I'm just making sure. I just don't want to misrepresent you.
Yeah. What? So I would say, yeah, about 5,000 BC.
Okay.
Something like that.
So that would be very old for the earliest dates that we have for writing.
Between 4,000 and 5,000 BC. Yeah.
Most people in archaeology accept the first writing was somewhere between 3,400 BC, maybe down to about 3,000 BC, with the best evidence coming out of early writing coming out of places like Uruk and Nineveh.
And secular archaeology?
No, actually, this is bringing me neatly back to my point, and thank you for bringing that up. Is without biblical archaeology, we never would have found the sites of Nineveh and Uruk.
Yeah, okay. I know they found a lot of sites based on the Bible evidence, but what I'm saying is, you saying secular archaeologists think that writing began?
No, I'm not saying that. Why would it matter if they're secular or not?
Because there's different worldviews. There's atheist worldview, and then there's the biblical worldview.
No. You have now. Okay, now, as I say, now you're kind of walking down some of the roads I know quite well. So no. There are people who approach archaeology, looking for evidence to provide proof for the Bible. Yeah, but they all approach archaeology in the same way since about 1920. Yeah, all of them. Right. You have what I would call pseudo archaeologists, or kind of slightly out there ones, but I'm talking about the mainstream. And this doesn't matter whether you're looking at the Israeli Archaeological Department, which has a very heavy religious bias, I think you'll accept, whether you're talking about some of the Christian archaeological field studies, say out of Notre Dame, or whether you're talking about not. The secular bit really doesn't come into it when you're actually looking at the finds and the evidence. All we're looking to do is...
secular does not equal atheist.
It comes into play when the ambiguity of the dates come about, and then they just fit it wherever they choose to.
No, they don't. That's complete bullshit.
Wow.
Sorry. There's nobody just says, I don't like it there, I'm going to put it up there. That's not how everything is cross-correlated and cross-supported. So, for instance, if I'll just use personal experience for me, I've done a lot of field walking, I've done some archaeological digs myself. So, I'll find a piece of pottery, and we'll just use a piece of pottery as a simple example. Now, what I can do is I can look at that, and then I can look at a catalogue for all the other finds that we've had for that kind of pottery, and then we're going to cross-correlate it with things like, we found some coins there, and these coins have been dated because they've got a date on them, or they have a ruler on them that we recognize and that we have a time frame for. And what we generally talk about is degrees of accuracy. So we will never say, unless we have very specific information, it happened in 1621 BC on the 3rd of April or whatever. It's going to be much more around this is coming from a time frame that looks to be, say, from 1580 BC up to maybe 1650 BC, depending on the type of correlating data that we have to it. We'll also look at other finds as well from other places, because obviously there's a lot of trade. And we can say, okay, well, this pottery can't really be earlier than this or really later than that. That's kind of how we work. Yeah, and then we look at the other evidence that cross supports it, other pieces of pottery that have been found elsewhere.
That's exactly what I said. That range and ambiguity causes a secular archaeologist who has the most support to place an event out of the timeline, the biblical timeline.
We're not talking thousands of years here. We're talking decades, maybe centuries, depending on the age.
It still throws it off. It still throws
the
it
mechanism
off based on the rulers involved, and the lifespan of the historical people.
That's part of the correlation effect that we use. So, for instance, if we go to Egyptian archaeology, we have a very, very good record of the Egyptian rulers and when they ruled, and what dynasties they belonged to, and generally, generation to generation relationships as we go down to time. It's got a few gaps here and there, but generally, it's pretty solid for about 4,000 years. It's an incredible period of history to be able to map. And again, we look at things like stela, we look at inscriptions, we look at artifacts that we can date to that period. And certainly as we go, forward in time, as soon as we get to sort of about 3,000 to 2,500 BC, in basically, what's Mesopotamia or Iraq, Iran, bits of Turkey, Anatolia, and bits of North Africa. We get a lot more accurate because we have a very better understanding. Because it's not just, David was here. We're correlating that between things. We found communications going from, say, the Hittite Empire to the Egyptian Empire. Yeah, from one ruler to another. So that kind of...
Okay, so but I want to go back to a point you made. You said that they agree that writing began about 4,000 years ago. Give or take.
No. I mean,
4,000 BC.
It's about 3,000, 3,400 BC is kind of where we established. That's where we find early proto writing.
Humans become Homo sapiens sapien.
About 100,000 years ago.
Yeah. Ish.
Okay, so you're saying it took roughly 100,000 years for humans to begin to write. And for us, that's absurd. We believe that humans were created intelligence.
Yeah.
And they could speak. Okay.
Yeah.
And they could communicate. And then they decided to write in order to leave a record for the future.
Well, I can give you a perfect example to show that that's not absurd, because when did the Native Americans develop writing?
Oh, nice.
According to your model, I don't know, and I don't care. But I'm telling you,
they made it until approximately the 1600s before they started writing, maybe 1500s.
Wait, are you talking about writing in our form, or we, because of the drawings and stuff like that you would see?
Cave drawings.
Yeah, that could
South America had some pretty advanced math. They didn't have that in the North America, so.
You're out of your mind if you think Native Americans began to write in the 1500s. Completely, you've gone bonkers.
He's talking about North America, so he's talking about Plains Indians, North American Indians, Canadian Indians. He's not talking about Central American or Southern.
Well, either way, it's ridiculous to say that they began writing in the 1500s. It's ridiculous.
No,
I will accept your evidence against that.
1,500 years ago. So he's saying like 5.
No, I'm talking like the year of our Lord 1500 something.
Yeah, we bought the colonization of America was
the conquistadors introduced them to writing.
No,
that was mostly South America.
That's mostly Central and South America.
Okay.
Wow.
So North America here.
So they weren't writing before before the conquistadors got here.
It's worse than that. It's the fact that if you go to Central America, and you look at the cultures there, we've got writing going back to sort of 1500 BC or so. Yet nothing when you get to North America, because they had a different lifestyle. They didn't have. They didn't have a city-based lifestyle.
With
the exceptions of things like the Anzac Indians in Nevada and around that.
Okay, that new tribe that they've recently discovered in the rainforest or wherever they were, the guys with the big.
Well, the rainforest would be South America now, wouldn't it?
No, let him finish his point. Go on, Clem.
Is he okay? Yeah, that new tribe that they discovered that is untouched by modern people.
Mm-hmm.
So you're familiar with who I'm talking about, right?
I can look it up. I'll happily do that research in a second.
Okay.
I'm an archaeologist, not an anthropologist.
Then I can't answer the question. I mean, I can't ask the
No. But
my question would have been, do they have any writing?
No, I don't know, and that seems to be irrelevant to the point I made.
With the people that I'm talking about. So.
Well, that seems to be irrelevant to the point that I just made.
That's not irrelevant
North American
at all.
Plains Indians. Let me
you
finish.
Just
North
said
American
that Indians
American Plains Indians did not have writing.
Oh, sorry.
You said the Indians claimed they didn't have writing?
They didn't.
Okay, so that's fine. I said
I'll accept your evidence otherwise.
I
if
said
you show me where any of the North American Plains Indians had writing beforehand, I will accept your evidence.
I said if that's true, then that would mean that the newly discovered tribe that was discovered in one of these dense forests
in South America.
I don't know where it is.
If they're not in North America, then it's irrelevant to my point.
I don't know where it is.
If they're not a Plains Indian, it's irrelevant to the point.
There's a tribe that was found in a dense forest that was not touched by modern people, and they created a law in that locale saying that people can't go in there and interact with them. Like,
what does that have to do with my point about the established historical fact of the established historical
long enough, you will hear it.
Will you let me finish?
You asked me what's the point.
Will you let me finish? Of the established historical fact of North American Plains Indians not having writing until they were introduced to it by.
Okay, to respond to the question that you asked 5 times, the answer to your question, again, is that if what you're saying is true, then the newly discovered tribe that has not been touched by any modern people would not have writing as well. So
no, that's a complete non sequitur.
That would lead credence to your assertion that the Native Americans did not have writing.
That's a complete non sequitur. It has absolutely nothing to do with my point. Try again.
Yeah, right.
No.
It has everything to do with your point.
Armin's convinced we're being poed.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the claim is here. I mean, is it that is it all humans were writing all over the place? I mean, first of all, I think the newly discovered tribe he's talking about is in the Amazon. I mean, there's a.
Well, I can give you a brief idea of what we led us here. He asked when Homo sapiens sapiens started. I said about 100,000 years ago. And then he asked, so we went, and writing started in 3,500 BC. So we went almost 100,000 years before writing. Well, yeah. Including North American native tribes, North American Plains Indians, didn't start writing until the 1500s.
Yeah, and it's an answerable question. Because if it's the case that all human civilization has included writing, well, then why do we find so many so many settlement sites or so many encampment sites from people around the world where you find evidence of their lifestyle, tool making, and some evidence of government or hierarchy, but no writings.
And I'd like to give an example of that, because I do agree. I'm from Cameroon, and so one of the tribes, well, actually both the tribes I'm from, we have a written language. We have a language that's told very well by, I don't remember the term, but when you sing the language as well as when you speak it. So it's a little bit different. And in it, even today, there is no version of the language that's in written form. So I guess I don't know the value of the argument. It doesn't mean that history wasn't told. Doesn't mean that the Bible wasn't even communicated and carried down from generation to generation by a non-written language. So I'd like to get at the heart of what you're saying.
And I would totally agree with Hermione's point, because one of the things that if you look at any text like the Bible or a lot of the oral traditions, and obviously me being a Celt, we've got a very long oral tradition as well. The whole point of how those verses and why those verses are constructed in that way is because they are easy to remember. They are easier to memorize because they have a pattern, they have a syncopation. And if you think about the way you remember lyrics to music, you've only got to hear a snatch of a song to then remember the lyrics that go with that song if you know it. But if someone asks you to try and say those lyrics without the music, then it's actually much more difficult. And I think that is a fair point. But just going back to Claim's original point, if you look at the Sentinelese tribes on the Andaman Islands near India, they've been totally isolated for a very, very, very long time. They have no form of written writing. And they're a protected culture.
Okay, so
and I can point to lots of
paradigm would say that they forgot how to write. Now, to answer Hermione's question,
no, to say that to say they've forgotten how to write means you need to have evidence of some sort that they once did.
Okay, that's great.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Now, to answer Hermione's question, the fundamental difference in ideology, right? The evolution mentality tells the believer in that religion is that to say small things grew big over time and dumb things became intelligent over time. So you got a primate going to a Homo erectus, and then the Homo sapien, and Homo sapien sapien, and then the Homo sapien being Adam and Eve in the scientific community that was found thousands of miles apart in different layers of rock, different layers of sediment. Okay, they call these people black. Okay, so the highest evolved form of human being are white people. Okay, so that's the mentality of evolution thinking: small to big, dumb to intelligent.
Can I ask a question?
Wait,
one second.
The fundamental difference between that and our ideology, biblical ideology, is that you start off intelligent and you eventually corrupt and become dumb over time. And also animals go from big to small, not from small to big.
Okay, so I just want to pick on one point there. That basically, you think that evolutionists,
as well.
You think that evolution makes people believe that white people are the most genetically advanced creatures on the planet from the point of view of Homo sapiens sapien.
Of course.
You're mad.
Sorry, I'm curious. Where did you
you must have never read what you call it?
Here we go.
Species, the species of the preferred races.
No, I've actually read the whole of the origin of species.
Let him do it.
Okay, go. I'll let you do this one, Hogtie.
Yeah. So where? Okay, your view is that this is what modern evolutionary theory teaches, right? Is that the white people are superior?
Not modern.
Okay. Well, don't let me paraphrase it.
Origin of species, the preferred, the survival of the preferred races. The preferred race being the white race.
Okay, I want to. Okay. Do you think that the white? Wow. Okay. Do you have? So we're talking about Darwin's book, right? Origin of Species.
Right. Which is not the modern evolution.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Origin of Species.
Backed off of that in order to save face.
Yeah, let's talk about Origin of Species a little bit here. So you're saying you're going by the full title of the book, Origin of Species, or was it Survival of the?
Full title. That's the title of the book.
Can somebody? Yeah, favored races by means of natural selection. That's the title you're referring to. Okay. Do you claim in your view? Do you have a favored race? And remember, we're talking about what Darwin was writing
The
about.
answer to your question is of course.
Oh,
Hold on 1 second.
You do your favorite race? Remember, I want everyone to remember as I say this, we're talking about the races that Darwin was talking about.
Darwin didn't mean race like we mean
No,
race.
I know,
so-
I got it. Yeah, I know exactly what he meant. Go ahead, Claim. You say you have a favorite race?
He had to take a phone call or something.
Oh.
So you gotta wait.
Well, while he's doing that, let's get the. Let's look it up.
I know which.
Okay,
I
now
know what he's talking about.
I'm not going to say my favorite race, but it starts with a C. Okay, but after
I answered twice before I muted. I said, of course, I have a favorite race.
Yeah,
what's your favorite race?
And what is it? Remember, we're talking about the races. So I found the title: on the origin of species by means of natural selection, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. That's the full title. So,
Okay, so
again, we're talking about races that Darwin was talking about. What's your favorite?
what's his races? Define his races.
Well, no. Well, you're the one saying that this establishes.
Define his races.
What do you mean?
No, but you're the one establishing the fact that the conclusion from your perspective was he meant the white race. So now what we're doing is we're challenging your claim to say, okay, describe why he meant that.
I don't think he's saying that Darwin specifically meant.
He
No,
is exactly saying.
Well, I think he's exactly saying that.
Yeah, I think so is too. But what claim? A simpler question was.
conflating two different concepts. And the two different concepts he's conflating
Hey,
is the
don't music.
idea of what Darwin initially put out, and he's taking the ideas of this century, which took race and elevated it and said white is the stronger race. So he's taking natural selection and the ideas of what's that group that starts with an E?
I think honestly, Ermine, I think you're giving him far too much credit here. He's going off of the favorite races in the racist sense.
Well, in the book Origin of Species, which race do you like the most in that actual book, though? In the book itself.
Which race do you? Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it, Steve. So yeah, Claim of the book of the races that Darwin was talking about on Origin of Species. Which you say you have a favorite race of those races? Which one do you prefer? Which do you think is favored or better?
Define his races.
Well, you're talking about the book. I don't want to know what of those races he was talking about. Which race do you prefer?
List them.
Well,
there's white and there's red and.
Yeah.
That's not how Darwin saw it. Stop it.
Yes, it is.
That's in there. That's in there, and it's my favorite. It's my favorite too. So.
Which one?
Yeah, let's make it a multiple choice. Give me all his races in the book.
Okay.
And then I'll give you my favorite race.
Okay, white, red, and Savoy.
What color is Savoy?
It's a greenish kind of. Yeah, it's more greenish than say either white or red.
You didn't see no damn Savoy race, no green race.
Yeah.
Obviously, you haven't read the book.
It's more sort of in Asia, like Eastern Asia, South Asia. We don't get much of it here. White is actually where I live. I live in a fairly cold climate, and white really fares the best. In my area, white would be the favored race. Environmentally, the white race would survive better. I mean, have you tried them all?
You're a funny guy.
How's that?
Oh, let me look it up since you don't want to tell me.
I did tell you. I don't understand what your problem is. You're talking about your knowledge of what Darwin was writing about when he talked about favored races.
Uh-huh.
I mean, sorry. Let me ask you this: is it the case you don't know what? Have you actually read the book? Do you know what races he was talking about?
As far as the humans, I would have to refresh my memory. I can't memorize every single book I've ever read, bro.
We're not talking about humans. We're talking about Darwin's writings on the favored races.
That's no problem. I'm looking it up now.
Okay.
All I was saying is that there were some unscrupulous people who took that insight and then, oh, you guys know. I don't have to.
Yeah, no, I know exactly where you're going, Hermione, and I think again that's a fair point. It's the difference between looking at the core information that we're talking about, and then the popularization, however positive or negative, of that information and how it was then used, maybe as a way of justification. Even though I don't think Darwin was a very good way of using that, because he was a very pluralist person and had no patience for people involved in things like the slave trade, and obviously that's pretty much towards the end of the slavery period as well, where I think most people come into the realization that it was a fucking stupid idea. And
Go ahead.
Oh, eugenics. That was the word I was trying to think of.
Eugenics. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Darwin was not only, I mean, in his early writing, he didn't really have any big statements about the nature of the slave trade or about the relations amongst human races, if we want to use that term. But later in his writing, he was quite expressly against the slave trade, so very much opposed to industrialized civilizations taking over non-industrialized civilizations and wiping them out. These are all things he was expressly opposed to. And I guess what I'm wondering, Claim, is what I was asking you before was about where did you get this idea that Darwin was sort of into this idea that white people are superior to not white people, and what you said, you got it from his book, and I think what I'm detecting now is that you've actually never looked at Darwin's book on Origin of Species. I think you've actually never seen it. I'm wondering if it's possible that where you get this idea from, that the title of the book indicates that Darwin was a racist, or in any way thought white people were superior. Maybe you get that from other creationists. Is that the case?
No,
go ahead.
Could be, and it could be coming from like she said, the eugenicist movement, who actually. What's his name? His cousin. I know he wasn't. I know he was a Christian, a fake Christian guy. But I'm saying that his cousin. What's his name? The other guy.
No, we're not worried about his cousin. We're not worried about his cousin. Claim
yes,
what we're asking you about. What I'm asking you about here. I'm asking you about
promoted a different message than Darwin in totality. So that message evolved into the destruction of my people after slavery.
I'm asking about where did you come to learn about Darwin being a racist and all these other things, and I mean, first you said it's from his book, but now it's obvious you haven't seen the book.
Even though he was a racist, but that's not what I said. But yes, he was a racist. But I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm wondering
I said evolutionary thought.
You said it was in the title of the book.
That you go from dumb to smart, and you go from big to little. I mean, little to big. What?
Claim you said it was in the title. He said it was in the title of the book. The title of the book meaning On Origin of Species, the favored races. Now, in regards to that book, though, are you kind of getting any understanding that has nothing to do with human races, or are you still under the impression that does to do with human races?
Yeah, he was looking it up. Did you find it?
Has very few references to human races. Okay. Darwin avoided explaining this topic, which was then controversial in debates over slavery and imperialism. But he's still
in the Origin of Species. Are you sure you're reading about the right book here?
As he indicated that the principle of sexual selection could also apply to the races of man.
Okay, where are you finding this? Are you looking this up right now?
The
reason I paused.
Charles Darwin's wiki page on Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you, so do you have any familiar? Okay, because I'll tell you, one of the things that you sort of gaffed about here was when I asked you, like, where do you get this idea that he's racist? You said it's from the title of the book. I think we've now established you've actually never seen the book or never looked up anything in it. Just so you know what we're talking about, when I asked you about the races that are mentioned
about him being racist, but now I am saying he's racist since you keep asking me that question. He was a racist.
Okay. Well, what races? Okay. First off, let's get this one point out of the way because everyone's sort of waiting for me to discharge this point so we can move on to the next one. When he talked about the favored races, what was his best example in the book about favored races, sort of being best fit for one?
Cabbage.
And I what's that?
Cabbage.
White cabbage, red cabbage, Savoy cabbage. Yeah, he was.
As I was saying, my favorite
cabbages.
thing is the sea, cabbage. Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
so
cabbage,
that
white
doesn't have
cabbage.
anything to do with what I'm talking about, my man.
That's what the book's about.
Evolutionary thought teaches people a fundamental differently mentality than a biblical person. Okay.
Okay. Let me.
Their mentality is that things go from small to big.
Wrong.
Okay. Yes, it does. Goes from
No, it
simple
doesn't.
to complex. Yes, it does. Go from simple to complex.
No, it goes best fit to the environment. Okay. Let me tell you what.
Simple to complex.
Let me tell you.
All right. Now, and it also goes from dumb to intelligent.
No, that's not true either.
Oh my gosh!
It is best fit for the environment.
Person
Best fit
would
for the
say
environment.
that the pyramids were built with dumb hammers and fucking beat rocks. You know what I'm saying? The rocks that you beat.
I want to go back to your accusation that we all have selective hearing.
Go back to the racist thing.
They use ropes and stuff to tote the thousands of slaves, tote the blocks up a ramp.
Claim
pyramids. We can talk about pyramids later. Claim, this is one of the problems. This is one of the problems that we're having or you're having in this discussion. Try to stick to one topic. As soon as I start,
one topic is exactly what I said.
Look, really,
process. Really, I was trying to answer her mind's question that you keep interrupting over and over again.
First off, it's Ermine. Just introduction, Ermine. Claim.
Okay. Did I answer your question, Ms. Ermine?
What do you want us to call you, Claim? Do you want us to call you Claim or something else?
So I can stop trying to answer the question and just move on.
Well, no. The thing is, because you're interrupting. So
are you there, Ermine?
I'm here.
Did I answer your question?
A little bit.
Okay, well, I've been trying, but
dodging the hell out of mine.
I can't answer it because he keeps interrupting me over and over again.
No,
saying
you're interrupting. I have given you all the time in the world to talk. We actually you said you wanted to look something up, and we all stayed quiet while you were searching Wikipedia, which is great. You have that opportunity. That's fine. But now that I'm trying to address what you're saying, you're interrupting. So if you could just listen carefully for a moment. My concern is that when I ask you a question about, well, how did you come to learn this? Like, you're giving us a characterization of evolution, things going smaller to bigger, things going dumber to smarter, things going, I can't remember what your other example was, more simple to more complex. And I'm saying, no, that's not what it is. And then you talk about the racism aspect of it. I ask you, where are you learning these things? My suggestion to you're learning about evolution by reading straw man versions of it from creationist websites or from some other source. It seems like you know very, very little about it, and you're asking questions that maybe could help you understand a little bit more about it, but then as soon as they're being answered, you reject it. And when I asked you about, well, where'd you get the idea about racism, and you said, oh, well, it's in the title of Darwin's book. I asked you about it. You don't even realize that the book, that when he's talking about selection to be best fit for the environment, he was talking about cabbages. Right, so I want to tell you.
You're lying.
Oh, really?
He called all speciation races, including the human speciation.
Well, he did everybody. Okay, you got to know how the word race was used.
You're a liar.
Really? I would love for you to take that back. Jesus would love for you to take that back. If you believe that Jesus ever told you not to bear false witness.
You really believe that he was only talking about cabbages out of all
no.
species that he was talking about on Earth? He was talking about any species that he called the race.
He was talking about the specific example from the title. Please do not conflate the point.
Yeah, no, and he talked about all.
You think the title of when it says racist favorite races was only talking about cabbage?
I'm talking because you referred to that book.
And you said it was only talking about cabbage.
No, there are other examples in there, but you
it's
said
every example. No. That's what I said.
You said he was talking about. You said he was talking about human races.
Oh my God, he was talking about human races.
Particular title.
He was talking about races.
I'm wondering, are you interested in retracting your insulting and wrong claim that I'm lying? That's.
I doubt we're going to get that, and I just want to make.
He was talking about every life form, and he called the different species races.
As did everybody. Not different species. No. Races would be within species. Races would be probably a better term for it. Would be variety.
So he had races for every species, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, let me wrap up because I'm taking too much time here. But look,
sure.
Races. At the time,
it's not only talking about cabbage.
Okay, shut up and let other people talk. Could you please?
I will solve that. I will hide him from the broadcast.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And Hermione's point actually on the side chat is something you should reclaim, because I think that's actually a perfect point. Thank you, Hermione.
Yeah, I'm gonna back down from this guy for a second. Yeah. I'm taking the yelling. It is incessant interrupting.
I just want to make one point about evolution and the thing is, one of the things that absolutely staggered me when I started looking at it as a subject as a child was it actually made me realize that we're all part of the same family. All of us. And it actually really upsets me when, I hear it used as a divisive topic. Because, to be honest, I don't really give a toss what, how much melanin or lack thereof someone has in their skin or, which particular culture they come from. I care about what they do as a person and how they treat others.
Yeah, well, there are three different theories under discussion here. Theories might be too strong a word for it. But I wish maybe let me say this point then, Flame, is that here's the thing. There are three different things we're talking about. You always say creation versus evolution, and that's not the case. There's evolutionary theory, and then there's creationism, and then there's this crevolution thing or strawvolution. There is what as you describe evolution, you're not describing evolutionary theory. You're describing how creationists describe evolution, and it completely. And we'll tell you, look, you're wrong about this. This is not how we understand evolution. This is not how evolution is written about. This is not how anybody understands evolution except for creationists.
And while you're allowed to talk for 10 minutes straight, and then when I start speaking, you say, "Oh, just let me finish."
Nobody stops you from talking until you try to stop somebody else from talking by talking.
They're interrupting, Claire.
And actually, I was literally finished at that point. As long as you understand, I mean, if you're here to have an open-minded discussion, then when somebody points out to you, no, that's not what I think. If you say something to me about my beliefs about evolution, and I tell you, no, that's not how I understand.
Well, I'm not debating what you think.
For example, things going smaller to bigger. That is not part of evolutionary theory.
I'm not debating what you think. I'm debating the theory itself. So
but you'll then make
you to accept your own theory first, and then debate me.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If you later in the hangout, let some other people do some stuff here. But if you later in the hangout start to get on some flat Earth stuff, I think that this will be a theme. Is that you are not interested? You are not.
Don't interrupt him.
You are not at all interested. You appear not at all interested in what our ideas actually are. You're telling us our ideas are wrong. But then you're not at all interested in listening to us tell you what our ideas are. Like you learned you think
getting muted and hidden.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna keep muting you until just let me finish. It's if you're worried it takes too much time, then just shut up for a second, let me finish. It's actually quicker than you interrupting and me having to repeat it. You learn this nonsense from creationist websites. It would be like me telling you that I think Christianity is wrong because I don't believe the part in the Bible where Jesus got into a spaceship and wiped out the Egyptians. And then you saying, well, that's not in the Bible. I said, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So,
and then telling him to shut up and be a liar.
And that's actually exactly the same thing going on here. It's literally what's going on. Yes, it is.
It's obvious that in Darwin's book, every species, he had races for every species, including
every other author at the time.
Not exclusively for cabbage.
Race was a synonym for species at that time.
It was a synonym for breed. It was for breed. Okay, because they're artificial selection. Yeah. Okay, because everything in that book. Okay, we read this book. I read it years and years ago. Everybody here, I think, has probably read this book. Has nothing to do with human evolution or human species. It is about breeding certain species of domestication of cabbages and what are they called? The birds. The
finches.
It wasn't finches. No, it was pigeon, wasn't it?
Finches.
It wasn't in finches. No, it was domestication of pigeons.
No, domestication of pigeons. Yeah,
that's
in species. Yeah.
And it was animals that was in there, small animals. That's what the book was about. It had nothing to do with black people, white people, absolutely nothing. There's no mention of that anywhere in that book.
Oh, okay.
Go read it.
So where did the let me see here, the diagram, right? Where'd that come from? The diagram of
Don't gloss over that. What I just said. Where something came from doesn't matter. It's not in that book. Do you accept that or not? If you don't accept it, then go find in that book anywhere that's mentioning of human race. Find one passage. Find one statement in that book.
It says it talks about humans.
Guys, I just quote in there.
Huh?
I'm not. We're not talking about.
Yeah, that was Descent of Man.
Descent of
Different
Man.
book.
Yes, that's important. We made the claim.
Well, no. It's not. It's not important. It's absolutely unimportant. We're not talking about Descent of Man. Different book. We can talk about that as well.
Belief on races.
No, we're not. We're not talking about it, Ramin. We're talking about in the book. We're talking about in the book. In the book, Origins of Species. You made a claim that it has to do with human species. It does not. Okay? There's nothing in that book.
Wikipedia says it does.
No, it's not. Wikipedia's talking about Descent of Man. It's a totally different book.
That are watching, I'd like to have the articulation on this. At some point in the future period, this is what Darwin says in The Descent of Man, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world.
And we can address that. We all know this passage. We know exactly what he meant by this one too. But this is a different thing. So let's wait on this one, okay? Because we can address it.
Let's look at this one.
Okay, what is it about? What about
my screen is up? My screen is up. I'm going to read it. Okay. If I won't be interrupted, I can read it. All right. Choice of title.
Go ahead.
Darwin had initially decided to call his book an abstract on an essay on the origin of species and varieties through natural selection, but with Murray's persuasion, it was eventually changed to the snappier title on the origin of species, with the title page adding by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Here and elsewhere in the book, Darwin used the term races interchangeably with varieties, with the meaning of varieties within a species. Thus, he discussed the several races, for instance, of the cabbage, and the hereditary varieties or races of our domestic animals and plants. There are very few references to human races, and Darwin avoided explaining this topic, which was then controversial in debates over slavery and imperialism. But in difficulties for the theory, he indicated that the principle of sexual selection could also apply to the races of man.
Right, and let's analyze this.
Very few references.
Let's analyze this. Yes, we've all read this.
That there were references to human races.
We've all read this before. Okay, let us explain this to you. Okay,
you're explaining something.
The races.
He's actually reading something saying that Darwin avoided and just didn't discuss the human races.
Which goes against
and he includes
the human races.
Yeah. First of all, variety is a different meaning of the word breed.
Human races are in the book.
Variety is one word for breed for plants. Okay, they generally use varieties within a species of plants. Okay, but it's just breeding. It's for artificial. Okay, there is very few references that's only dealing with sexual selection. Okay, they didn't have this. They didn't have any. Oh, what's the word? There's no taxonomic level for black, white, Caucasian, Negroid. There isn't a taxonomic level for them. Okay, he was talking about sexual selection. Okay, so it wasn't about humans being more favored. Blacks are better than whites, whites are better than blacks. That had nothing to do with any of that. Okay, that's the point we're trying to show you, that it had nothing to do with human races as far as Caucasians or black or anything like that. It had nothing to do with those things. It had to do with sexual selection.
Okay, so I'm liable to not believe you until I read it myself. And then
it's just said in there that he went out of his way to avoid any kind of thing like that.
Right. That's true. Due to the political climate. Okay, now.
Yeah, but the races he was talking about wasn't black race or white race.
Right there, coupled with the other thing that you tried to sweep under the rug.
I haven't swept under the rug. I said we would get to it. No, you know what? Stop this. Stop. No, I'm gonna help you out there. No, hang on. Hey, no. No, how dare you say I'm trying to sweep it under the rug when I said 5,000 times we know about that and we will get to it too. I am really starting to get angry that you've insulted Hogtie, you've insulted me, and now you're saying it's basically people are trying to sweep it under the rug. No, we've done this a billion freaking times, Claim. Okay, we know of the argument. We will get to them in due course. Jade will rip this one to shreds after I hand it over to her. Okay, but don't sit there and tell us that we're hiding anything. That's ridiculous.
And sorry, Claim, before you go,
Yep.
can I just ask for and for everybody, and especially Claim, but for everybody, can we just dial it back a bit? Have a conversation. You can hide him from broadcast again, because I'm 8 seconds into what I'm saying, and he does it again.
Okay.
Look, everybody, it's a conversation. It's fun. It's a hangout, right? Where nobody's on trial here. It's just let's have some fun with it. Can we dial back the interrupting? And Claim the thing that you're doing as soon as somebody tries to make a point to you, like I was making the point that I don't think you understand this stuff. I think you're relying very heavily on your sources and not listening to us talk about our own views. Your response to things like that is to call people liars and to say you're trying to sweep something under the rug. I would suggest to you, Claim, nobody likes that sort of personal attack. So if you could stay focused on what people are saying and not launch into insulting personal attack, you'll find that people won't interrupt you as much.
Wikipedia is incorrect.
Nobody. How did you get that out of what he just said?
Yeah,
seriously.
I want you to justify. I want you to explain exactly how what I just said leads to the claim that Wikipedia is incorrect, and nothing else. Nothing else.
Yeah, get us there first, please.
How long do I have to speak?
Or apologize.
How much time will I have to speak?
How long does it take you to make that correlation? Go ahead.
As much as you need. As much as you need to make that specific point.
Hiding, interrupting, blocking, retardation. All right. Now, I stated that in Darwin's book it talks about races of humans. You said no, it doesn't. It talks about races of cabbages. And then I looked at the Wikipedia article that confirmed my suspicion that it also talked about races of humans.
It's not talking. Yeah, it's not talking about human races of humans.
You continue to say that it doesn't talk about races of humans. This is what you continue to say. So therefore, you're saying that the Wikipedia article is incorrect.
No. Okay, first off, my point, when the last time I was on the microphone, my point was exactly, can everyone in the room please dial back the interrupting? Claim, can you dial back the personal attacks on people? Because all it does is it makes people want to jump in and interrupt you. The conversation will go a lot more smoothly.
Okay, so you just admit that you were incorrect?
And you completely, no, you know what? What's the point? Look, I've asked. This is where, if you're interested in genuine conversation, you'd say, "Okay, sorry, let's move on." Now, look, you read something from Wikipedia that confirms exactly what I said. Darwin was writing about cabbages and about other selection in other animals and plants, and he made scant mention. There were no passages in there that talks about human races. And I'm referring to what the book actually says. You're saying if I go onto Wikipedia and I squint when I interpret this one line that says how Darwin kind of avoided that topic, I can conclude that Darwin talked about that topic.
No, it says there are very few references to human races.
Yeah, he very, okay, show us in the, okay, tell you what. Origin of Species is available online.
You have to squint to interpret that? Very few references to human races?
You know what I interpret that to mean? I interpret that to mean very few references to human races. That is, he didn't write passages about
how I
human
interpret
races.
it as well.
No, sorry, not human races.
Which means that human races are in the book.
Now you've changed the words even from the Wikipedia article. I'm saying we've read.
I didn't change the words at all. It was a direct quote.
You just changed it. Would you just say?
There are very few references to human races.
That means there's at least a couple.
Or at least a couple. Yeah, well, whatever.
Hey, can we get Jade in here for a second?
Yeah.
It's whatever when you're proving incorrect. And then that's why I called you a liar, because human races.
Okay, stop. No, there we go. That's
okay.
There we go. Please stop calling anybody a liar.
You're holding to your guns.
Can I?
That there is no.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow this, guys. I'm not allowing
No.
this.
Can I?
Yeah, I'll give it to you in 1 second, Jade. If he calls an expert a liar again, I'm done with this conversation with him. We don't need to have that, okay? Nobody's calling anybody a liar. We have been very polite to him for the last hangout for 8 hours. Nobody called him a liar, okay? People are going to make mistakes. This is not. This is, well, okay, fine. But we're not making mistakes here. We can explain this. There are explanations.
And then I
for
showed
things.
how he was wrong.
You don't need to jump to fucking saying people are lying. Go ahead, Jade.
Okay, I've done quite a bit of research into Darwin and race, including looking up a lot of his references. What I want to go to, though, called The Victorian Reinvention of Race, New Racism and the Problem of Grouping in the Human Sciences. This is from the Routledge Studies in Modern British History, and the book is by Edward Beasley. I have the book on Kindle, and so I wanted to quote from the book. Go back to that. Certainly the word race was well enough known in England before 1850. It was used as a description for a family or clan-sized group with common descent. But in early Victorian Britain, Victoria came to the throne in 1837, people did not as yet have the major color races in their heads. They applied the word races to whatever groups they wished, with or without any idea of common descent. To use the race in that way today, one might speak quite literally of the race of London taxi drivers or the race of Californian professors. In calling groups of such widely different sizes and descriptions races, the early Victorians were quite as serious about finding physical differences between people as the late Victorian color races might be in discussing the characteristics of blacks, whites, and yellow. Now, in research multi-volume account of London social groups in the 1850s and 1860s, Henry Mayhew famously discussed the dirtiness and the life conditions of children of different vocations in London, but also the mental characteristics and indeed the skeletal shapes of the race of chimney sweeps and the race of trash gatherers and so on, within his two larger composite races of wanderers and settlers. So the term race in Britain, well, it evolved, which is what this book is about, how it evolved in terms. In early Victorian Britain, it had reference to do with descent. You know, a race indicated that there was some common ancestry. But it then came to mean a more common term of a group of things. Like I said, a group of Californian professors or London taxi drivers. So the term race there, as he said, they didn't have the color races in mind. Race could mean anything. And if you go into Wikipedia, and this I've done myself, and you look up dictionaries from the 19th century, because Wikipedia scanned lots and lots of books from that century. Now remember, dictionaries don't define words, they describe the usage of the word. So these Victorian dictionaries describe the way that time. Dictionaries, you will see that race just means group, any grouping. Darwin frequently used the term race to mean species. So when he's talking about races of cabbages, he's talking about different species or different kinds of cabbage, just a different group. Always species. There is a quote from Darwin. I don't have it at my fingertips. I can find it. And this is something I looked up. When he talks about humans, about how people are divided into, by one person, two races, or species. He says races or species. Two humans. Another person divides them into three, another into four, another into five, another into seven, all the way up to races. And the point he's trying to make is, how do we define people? How do we describe and separate people when you have this vast difference from two quote-unquote races to 62 quote-unquote races? And by the way, for those of you who are interested, because I looked up all of these people and what they were talking about, which wasn't easy because some of it was in French. 62, there were 60 and 62. These people were defining people as different races via their languages. So it's just their different grouping. This was a linguistic grouping. Some of these people had looked at people according to geographic location. So, you know, people of a particular skin color would be different races because they lived in different parts of Africa or different parts of the Caribbean or the Pacific Islands. So it's geographic, not think of it. And some people were more serious about this. For some people, this was just a casual, useful term to describe the Hottentots, for example. The Hottentots, according to many people, were a race, even though they were just one group of people in Africa. The term race didn't have a specific meaning. It just meant a group of things. Sometimes Darwin used it to mean species, but even his term species in this usage wasn't specific. And Darwin himself talked about how do we find, when you look at this group of people, this group of people, that group of people, where is the defining line? You can't find it. This is one of the reasons, if you read his actual works, one of the reasons that he didn't speak about races of man, especially the way we think of them, and thought of this differently, is because he, in his writings, points out, where do you find the defining line? Because they all blend into each other. And yes, this is directly from his writing. So I'm done.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Now we have
sorry, claim.
Hang on. Hogtie is going next. Hogtie's going
perfect
next.
example of
Claim
how.
was
No, I'm not, because Hogtie had already asked me
It's
to
okay.
suggestion quickly.
It's okay. It's okay. And then,
Hold on a second. We have a perfect example of how the other panel members are allowed unlimited time and be redundant as
just
they like
make
to
your
be.
point. We're giving you the
No,
time.
I'm making my point right now.
No, you're not.
Without
You're
being cut
complaining.
off. You see how Hogtie is cutting me off? You see what I'm saying? So the other panel members here are allowed to speak for unlimited time.
Okay, first of all, that's the first thing that Jade has said all day today.
Without being cut off.
Well, I'm going to cut you out because, yeah, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
You see how it's
I don't. I don't need to listen to this. Go ahead and move on because this is ridiculous. Jade has not spoken anything. She gave. Wait. She gave you a very comprehensive fucking.
Okay, I'm getting to that.
I'm just going to hide you and I'm done with you. I'm done with you. I'm not playing this more. She gave you a very comprehensive. If you can't deal with the topics, I don't want to have this conversation. She gave you a very comprehensive thing, and all you did was complain how long she had to talk, which wasn't very that long compared to what Jade usually talks about. Okay, no, and if you would have, if we could continue the conversation, I could show you something that might be of interest to you. Okay, I will give you plenty of time to respond. Okay, plenty of time, I assure you. Lay off the hyperbole. It's really getting old.
Yeah, all that happened here, Clayton. She was making a point, and I think we want to hear what you have to say in response to it. No, we're not interested. No, if you're complaining, all you're going to do is complain. I had said in the chat, you're going to get hidden from broadcasting again. This is really not fair because we want to hear what you want to say. We want to hear what you want to say, but no.
How is that true? But your behavior shows something different.
Okay, listen. I'm going to do it. Sorry, Steve, but just listen. So Jade was making a point. Again, I had asked, can everybody dial it down a bit, dial back the interrupting, that sort of thing. We claim because you're the only one in the room representing your position, we actually want to give you more time to explain your position. Jade was just saying something about the use of the word race. I had typed in the slide chat, can I make a quick suggestion before you get on to your thing? As soon as you started talking, I said, no, fine. Other people were saying, no, let Hogtie make his point. I said, no, let claim go, we'll let claim go. And yet all you did was you complain about it. So I'm actually I'm gonna hold back my suggestion for a second. I want to claim, you can come back in. Please address what Jade was saying and less complaining about the time because you're gonna have all the time you want right now. Please go ahead.
I'm going to get to that, but you're complaining about me speaking, so I'm giving a counter argument.
Yeah, he doesn't understand how do these things go. He was giving you're going to get plenty of time, but don't sit there and bitch. I don't want to hear it. And since you're going to get a timeout, and you're going to listen to this, and then you're going to have another chance to respond. If you had actually done your research and you looked at the citation at Wikipedia, it would have taken you to Talk Origins. Okay, and Talk Origin says race, as used by Darwin's, refers to varieties, not to human races. It simply points out that some of the variations that occur naturally survive in greater numbers. And if you actually go to Origin of Species, the word human appears 3 times in the entire book, and twice is due to human nature, and the other one's human intelligence. And I think one of them is reason, one of them human intelligence. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. Now, do you comprehend that? That it has to do with human nature, human intelligence, and one place, human reason. That's the only time it even mentions the word human. And it's not even reference to the rest of the book. It has to do with other things that he's talking about, okay? So it's not talking about ethnicity as a race. That's just something you have to take away and you have to understand. Now you have plenty of time to respond. Don't bitch, just respond to what they're talking about. And what
I've been bitching the whole time.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah. Okay. Claim. I'll tell you what. I will acknowledge. I think this is the point you're making just about the moderation. Okay. I will acknowledge you should be given fair opportunity to make your point. Okay. I'm agreeing with. I'm not dismissing that. I'm agreeing with that. Okay. So I think we all agree
in behavior.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. I'm getting to the information part, and we can get back on the discussion. That's not a problem for me. I'm taking a moment to show you your behavior so that you can stop doing that. And you kept bringing up that you have been so polite to me for 8 hours. You called me astronomically stupid and ignorant, and called me all types of dumb.
I never called you a liar.
1,000 times in the last debate.
Fine, move on. Do you want to address the comments or not?
But did you see me get mad and don't bitch and don't bitch?
We've never called you a liar. Yes, you did. But do you want to address with the comments or not, or do you want to be like hyperbole and all this?
About liar, I may have been sensitive about being astronomically ignorant.
You are astronomically ignorant.
Okay, so
I disagree. I don't think people
why is your insult better than mine?
Okay,
because you insulted Hogtie.
Can you address Jade's point,
please? Gotcha. Okay. Well, now see if you can
address
the point. Keep it cordial like that.
The insult isn't even the problem. It's the false witness.
Then I
go back to what Jade said.
A lot quicker.
Okay, then let's go.
All right, moving on. What do you want to address with Jade? What Jade said? Go ahead. You have plenty of time.
Don't want the audience to hear.
You have plenty of time to address it. Go ahead. Take your time.
Yeah. So as you can see, their behavior is cutting constantly.
Okay, you're out of here. I'm ejecting you. I'm ejecting you right now.
Yeah, that's too much of that. He just can't address it. He
doesn't know. Allow me to speak on the topic.
Okay, I'm going to give him one last chance. Either address what Jade has to say, or I swear to you, I will eject you. Okay? I will be more than willing to give you half an hour of you addressing what Jade talked about, but that's all I want to hear is you addressing the issues. So please, for the love of God, address what Jade said. Nothing else. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not a child, for one thing. All right, for two, I told you I took a moment to show you your behavior so that you can stop doing it, and you're still doing it.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Steve, please.
Nope,
Oh,
he's done. He's done. I'm not playing this.
I was going to just let him say what he had to say,
No.
and then maybe after he finished bitching, maybe he'd get to the point.
No.
All right, I'd like to address what Jade said. I'd like to address is my mic on?
Yep, we can now hear you.
I'd like to address what Jade said. So, Jade, you pointed out some good points there as it related to the notion of races back then. I don't disagree. I'd like to get to the point of the distinction that was going on at that period of time, which I was hoping he was going to get to. We had the idea of the definition of races changing, but in the Descent of Man, he starts to point out, and you start to see him make the notion of race and tie that into human beings. The second thing that happened that starts to get a little frustrating is the eugenic racists as we know them today start to take his writings and his, not ideologies, theories, and drive it towards the races and the colors that we see today. And there's two things that really frustrate us about Darwin is he didn't stand back and say, no, that's not what I meant. He allowed for those people to run with his ideas not correct him, not check him, and basically throw his hands up and be like, well, I guess that's the natural progression of my thought. So the frustration that, and I can't entirely speak to claim because I'm not sure where he was coming from, the frustration of people who maybe aren't sided with Darwin and where his ideas naturally led in our society is that he didn't correct anything that was going on at his time at that time with, well, this isn't exactly what I meant. Now I'm done.
Well, I think that's a good criticism. I think that's a good criticism. And I honestly would have to look it up. For one thing, I'd have to look up the timeline. When did social Darwinism, because that's what you're talking about, get its start versus when Darwin lived. I do, if I remember correctly, I'd have to.
I don't know.
Profile.
Darwin kind of retreated after writing the after the publication because of all the fuss, and he went into doing research on all sorts of other different things. He's written a number of other books. So yeah, I don't know. Galton was his cousin, and Galton was the one who
he really pushed the eugenics thing.
Yeah, Galton was the one who pushed the eugenics thing. Because I'm actually looking up something right now. Unfortunately, I'm actually looking at a paper on Darwin on race, gender, and culture. Yeah, it's one of the things I'd have to look at is the timeline of this. Why did Darwin not speak up? I don't know. Eugenics.
Did we lose Jade?
I think so.
Yeah.
Wait.
Hi.
Okay. Oh.
How's everybody doing?
Hey.
Welcome back.
Sorry, I had to eventually get rid of him. It was just a little too much to take. I mean,
is there
ridiculous.
Can I throw in one thing here as well, or I'm not sure. Jade, were you done? There was kind of a lull when I popped in.
I think she's flagging out.
I think I had a big problem with lag. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Okay,
is there just
great.
I could throw one point in before we start again?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things with whenever they put these accusations about how Darwin was a racist and all that stuff is they really lose track of the context of what of the time, you know, when Darwin was alive and what the prevailing theories before Darwin were. And one of the things that they don't realize is that Darwin, by basically going out and saying, you know, with the writings that he did from the Beagle there and the origin of species, talking about humans have just been a variety, but all the same species, was actually revolutionary. Up to that point in time, some of the most popular theories dealt with the ones that dealt with some type of forms of evolution or whatever, you know, thought that there was like 4 subspecies of humans that were all descended from different animals or, you know, different groups that they're specially created at one point in time. So like, you know, even within one of the popular views I was followed by a lot of Christians at the time was that, you know, different races were created as different, you know, parts of special creation, and then, you know, they all descended from there and never, you know, were they at once sharing a common ancestor. That's these were the popular views at that time. For Darwin to come along and basically say that there is a human race and there's no variation. We just have like the different races there, but you know, we all share a common ancestor, was revolutionary.
Well, so it was controversial. That's a revolution, but it's certainly controversial. There were, I think Sokka's right about this and go to evaluate Darwin, is that this was not the only idea that was out there. Now, I do like Ermine's point about, well, maybe Darwin could have been more vocal about it, but I really take on board Sokka's point about that you have to evaluate somebody by their times. And the problem we have with Darwin, or with the way, sorry, not with Darwin, but the way creationists want to talk about Darwin, they don't want to look into the truth of the matter. And so I want to make one point here that isn't about the race thing, but just about how the conversation goes and about what it's like having a fellow like claim your whatever, claim your heritage, whatever his thing was, inheritance. Is that, I mean, I think people are looking for good discussions about these ideas, and the frustration we have is that when somebody comes in with that level of knowledge, or that, I should say, that incredible lack of knowledge, where all he knows is that Darwin wrote this book with the word, with the words favored races in the title, and therefore Darwin was a racist, and Darwin was a racist. Look, the discussion was about the truth of the matter of common ancestry. Is it the case that all humans share a common ancestor? Well, everybody agrees with that. But do humans share common ancestry with other great apes, right? That's the question that's up for debate. And he knows nothing about it. And my concern in these conversations is the old switcheroo that happens, or the diversion, the look over here diversion, because when we get into a discussion about the truth of evolution, about what, or sorry, not evolution, common ancestry, somebody's got to pop up and say, yeah, well, Darwin was a racist. And that is an interesting discussion in its own right, but it, in this case, was applied 100% to avoid any discussion about evidence. This is a guy who's claiming that humans were found below the KT boundary, and when you ask him for any sort of indication for evidence for that, well, he's got to talk about 12 different things. And the frustration here is that, okay, well, now he wants to talk about whether or not evolution or common ancestry is a good idea, right? Well, okay, well, that's debatable. I mean, I see some people raise concerns about it leading to eugenics and things like that. But does that speak to the truth of the claim of common ancestry at all? And no, it doesn't. It is expressly a way for them to avoid having that discussion. And then even then, it's okay, fine, we'll talk about the race thing. So Jade comes in and gives this well-researched understanding about how the term race has been used over the last couple centuries, and his response was to just complain, even when we concede the point, yes, you should be given time to speak on the microphone. We are all going to stop, we're going to lay off, we're going to mute our own microphones, we're going to lay off, we're not going to interrupt you, we're not going to mute you. All he's going to do is he's going to complain because he didn't listen to or understand what Jade was saying. So I think I would echo Steve's frustration when somebody comes in and says, well, I can talk about these things, but instead you talk about this topic, he wants to switch to that topic. Okay, we'll talk about that topic, but now he wants to switch to this topic. Well, now he's going to switch to that topic, and it just it gets frustrating very quickly.
Yeah, they're all diversionary tactics.
I have to echo the opposite. I've been listening to this. Well, I actually took a nap for a little bit of it, but I've been involved with it for some hours now, and because of it, it just seemed that every time this guy got started, he'd say a sentence, 3 people would jump down his throat. The reality of it is, it was 1 against 8 and a sleeping 1 for the majority of the conversation. And so what happened was, when he actually, we did listen to Jade go on for 3 to 4 minutes, and it was valid information, so we all shut up. But the second he started to say something, even though it wasn't on point, right, we all started to jump down his throat. So it reinforced the fact that this entire time, even though he was spewing bullshit, we haven't allowed him to finish. So this group has the ability to, very strong thinkers here, and just want to get to the point, but half of getting to the point is allowing the other person, even if they're circular in their communications, even if it's crap, is to actually finish. And so if we would have given them 2 to 3 minutes, 2 of them to bitch and moan about how he wasn't allowed to communicate, and then the other minute or 2 to make his point, I think we would have been far better off, because we would have at least been allowing someone, when it is so overwhelmingly out of his favor, to get his point across. And so I was absolutely pissed and ashamed of the moderation. You can.
Well, let me explain why that doesn't work that way here. Yeah, and I completely disagree too. Let me explain why. Let me explain.
Can I?
Let me explain why. let me go first. Let me go first.
Finish, though.
Oh, go ahead.
But still allow them give them the like respect to be heard.
Okay. We had hang on.
sorry.
I had 7 hours with this gentleman prior to this hangout. Okay, 7 hours of what was trying to allow him to do it that way. Every time we allowed him to just start talking, he would go and gish gallop to something else. He would say something completely irrelevant to what we were saying. He never directly answered anything we had to do with any questions. When we would ask him A, he would start talking about B. We asked him about B, he would start talking about C. I was not going to allow him to do it in this hangout like that. And anybody who watches the last hangout can see for 7 hours he avoiding our direct questions to no end. It was ridiculous.
And
he even got to the point he even said, well, give me, if I said, do you know about this topic? He said, you know what? Give me a minute. I'll Google something and I will be an expert on it kind of thing. It's like, well, we said you want to have a talk about the evolution, right? We go, okay, I'll start up a room. He comes in here. He makes these outlandish accusations that he couldn't support. He made so many claims in that last hangout. He did not support a single one of his claims with evidence. A single one of them he had no evidence for, right? Anybody who watched last hangout could agree with me on that.
Yeah.
So I was not going to allow him to do that in this particular hangout.
Yeah, I was part of
why.
that prior hangout,
Yeah.
and the topics varied quite a bit actually. We covered quite a bit, and in all those topics he was wrong to some degree.
Fractally.
To some degree,
wrong.
he was fractally wrong.
Well, when I say some degree, I mean pretty much 99% of the time. But yeah.
So that is why I moderated what I did in this particular room, because it was just ridiculous.
I do think Jade, partway when you were deciding, Steve, whether or not to boot him or not, I do think Jade had actually made a plea in there too. Well, fine, let him vent, let him bitch first, and then we'll get him back on the topic. So I think Jade wanted to say something here.
The thing is that it went for a full 8 hours. I mean, it's not like it went for not like an hour or something.
He threw the football to
sound
Jade.
like Jade.
Hang on. Yeah, he threw the football to Jade. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, like I said, I didn't know that, all right, and probably other people in this room didn't know that, but I just wish you would have listened to me for a minute and then explained that, because I think it just kind of went too fast. But what I wanted to say is, Hermione had made a very good point. Just of the timeline, because I get dates confused because I'm dyslexic, so I wanted to double check the timeline, and the Darwin died in 1882, but social Darwinism didn't evolve until the 1880s. So
I do think it
ancestors too. So I'm guessing. I mean, I'd have to look into this more. So I kind of wonder, how aware Darwin was of what was going on, given that he died about the time that social Darwinism was getting its start. However, there are predecessors to it, because Spencer wrote, what was the name of his book? Or Darwin, he wrote his book before Darwin published The Origin of Species, and Spencer was Spencer's work helped promote. Spencer got some of his ideas from Malthus, which, by the way, so did Darwin. A lot of this had to do with the teeming slums of London, and I could go into that and everybody'd get bored. But the idea was that people back then were looking at this horror that existed in the slums of London, the way people were living, and thought, there's something wrong here. Why are these people living like that, this generation after generation? And so they wanted to improve the race, so to speak, the human race. They thought, well, maybe we could discourage these people from breeding, since all they do is, breed like rats and live like rats. And it was apparently beyond the comprehension of some of the people at the time, because social Darwinism took classes to understand what was happening in terms of classes, to understand that when you keep people at abject poverty, they're going to live like that. So that's part of it, what I was going to say. The other thing is, directly previous to Darwin, people were very, very involved in phrenology, and this is how they looked at. This is before Darwin ever printed the Origin of Species. Matter of fact, there's an article I'd have to look up, but it's called The Cannibal Club. It's not quite what you think by the title, but the people back then looked at the shape of heads as to who was superior or inferior. For example, there was this one guy who developed a scale of negrescence. And on his scale of negrescence, because they were clearly, by the shape of their skulls and their primitive bearing, closely related to Cro-Magnon man, and therefore had a high degree of negrescence. People thought before Darwin. So this idea of superior, inferior, has its roots way back, and social Darwinism has its roots in Malthus. It's actually a far more complicated thing, but then it became something else. I said once it started in the 1880s, the idea was, can we apply a survival of the fittest to humans, because we're already seeing these teeming masses in the slums of London and elsewhere. Can we somehow improve the race? All of social Darwinism, all of eugenics was not a negative. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, the 50 to 80 years or so after Darwin's death were a great hotbed for all these really, really bad ideas. But again, as I say, it's just a distraction from, if you want to discuss the truth of the issue, it's a complete distraction. And I just, I guess we could have brought up the whole thing about, well, look at how Christianity has been misused. I mean, Christianity has been one of the greatest platforms for racism and some of the most vile forms of racism. If you're looking for somebody who is really, really profoundly racist, don't look to a group of evolutionists. Look to a group of Christians, especially evangelical Christians. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying all evangelical Christians are racists. I'm not saying that racism emerges necessarily from Christianity. I'm saying just on the actuarials. Go around. I mean, don't go to a biology department at Berkeley or Berkeley, at Harvard and see if you're going to find some people that believe in evolution and are also going to believe that blacks are inferior or that there shouldn't be race mixing. Go to a group of Christians, the KKK or Christians. Well, of course, as soon as you point these things out, they're going to say, well, those aren't real Christians. Okay, well, right. So you guys get to apply that defense, and people who believe in science can't apply that defense. I mean, it's just, like I say, the whole thing is a distraction. I think that the last thing I want to say about the moderation, though, is that I want to actually agree with everything that Ermine had said, except for how it applies to this particular conversation. And that is, you're right. I think, and the reason I want to echo what Ermine had said is because we need this reminder. We need the reminder when you've got a room full of people, it's 8 versus 1, it's 9 versus 1. We really have to show some discipline, step back. Sometimes you got to let one person engage, the one sole person. Sometimes it's a little more fluid and loosey-goosey than that. But it requires discipline. It's really hard to do. Now, with this particular individual, though, and yes, sometimes you do have to let people bitch. That's fine. I agree with that. With this particular conversation, though, the problem I had with him was there was never an occasion that you could ask him a question and get an answer. It wasn't like a 50-50 or a 90-10 thing. It was, if you said, look, I want to ask you this question. I want you to address this question. He just couldn't do it. He would immediately change the topic. And for as many times as he was told, look, just deal with this particular topic, he didn't do it. So I take your point, and I think you're right, that sometimes a guy's got to be given a chance to sort of vent and complain a little bit about the moderation, and then have people say, yeah, you're right. We got to give you a little more time on the mic. We got to sort of dial back our time on the mic. That's great. But now please go on with your point. I think if we'd have given him 3 minutes to address Jade's point, he wouldn't have spent 2 minutes bitching and then 1 minute addressing her point. He just spent 3 minutes bitching.
Yeah.
And I agree with Ermine too. I think she's very valid on this particular thing. This is a situational case by case basis, though, right? I perfectly agree 100% that people that are and I say minority in the group, meaning minority opinion, should get a little more time. I get that, but there's two factors you got to remember. One, the people that are a little bit more knowledgeable do get a little more time because they have informative information, right? Something that Jade's going to say usually going to be of a higher quality of level than listening to somebody like
Steve,
claim your inheritance. Hang on, let me finish. They claim your inheritance that generally just didn't know anything about any topics, right? But if he wants to make an argument, that's great. But as Hogtie points out, he had never once addressed anything we said. He never once provided a single thing to back up any of his claims. And third of all, if he would have spent 3 minutes bitching, he would have never gotten to Jade's claim, because I swear to you, I don't think he could have ever even repeated partially what Jade was talking about. He didn't know what she was saying.
Can I just make one quick point, because I've got to go back down and do some more cooking.
Oh, sure, yeah, sure.
Which was, it's really, really swift. I mean, I mean, when it comes to helping, I even tried to help him formulate an argument, because I could see he was trying to get something out, but he's not really getting it out, which is why I said, you know, well, let's look at this. You're not saying there's evidence for this. What you're saying is that the model you believe in says there should be, which is fine. And we would always, you know, as scientifically minded kind of people, say, cool. And we all would have said, cool. There wouldn't have been an objection. Then we'd just say, okay, now we've got to prove that the flood happened. Great. You know, we're a step forward. And that's what I tried to do.
Sure, and I'll be real quick too. I just want to say about the truth of the matter too when it comes to racism. I'm sort of combining two themes here about how talking about Darwin being a racist or not does not at all speak to the truth of the matter of the notions of common ancestry. That has to be addressed by evidence. But if you want to get into a discussion, as people tend to want to do, about Darwin's opinion on race, I do like what Sokka said about how you have to evaluate him by the thinking of the day. But it's such needle in the haystack research to say, oh, well, look at these other people who said that Darwin's ideas led to this, or look at the title of his book. I think if you actually do an investigation into what Darwin's thoughts on racism were, he really, really struggled with it. He grew up in a climate where it was just normal to believe that these people were different from those people, and there's a reason why those people are servants. And they use the word like savages. I mean, that word is so loaded. And he actually was one of the few to step outside of that and to write about his concerns about the way things were going amongst human relations. And it's an interesting study, and one that just seems to never be done. And it seems to be one that is he was an abolitionist. He was opposed to the slave trade.
There's a lot of books about him being an abolitionist.
Yeah, we never got even brought that up.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting topic. But if you want to, that's why I say I think a lot of time I like when these discussions are related to the truth of the matter. You want to talk about the truth of evolution or of common ancestry? Let's talk about common ancestry. Oh, now you want to talk about Darwin being a racist? Okay, well, let's talk about what Darwin actually did. I agree he could have been a little more aggressive with his ideas, but what would you have done in his shoes? Would you have been more or less aggressive? I don't know. That's an interesting topic. But one that they never seem interested, especially this fellow, did not seem interested in finding the truth of the matter about what Darwin's opinions about race relations really were. So, I notice the room is full, so I'm actually gonna step out for brunch instead of taking up a seat. Thanks, Steve.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Audrey.
Well, one of the issues is like you could just look at it in terms of scientific progress. Like back then in the 1800s, people were racist idiots. That's just how it was. People were racist idiots back then. But then science also progressed. Political views, socioeconomic views progressed. And nowadays, when you see people talk about evolution, trying to explain evolution, they're conscious of the ramifications that come with these kinds of things, especially when you're talking about human evolution. You can just talk about that. Again, it's saying, look, you're looking at the actual theory. People back then were racist. I don't know. I guess birds go tweet as well. But the other thing is like, look, there's a pattern of evolutionists trying to make sure that they are responsibly disseminating evolutionary theory, especially with respect to human evolution. But this pattern isn't consistent with a lot of the people who criticize or like to claim that evolution is racist. If you go and look at apartheid South Africa, a lot of the Christian school system opposed teaching evolution. You look at, there's a lot of private schools out there who put out information that's based on biblical creationism that talks about racist ideas. They're not interested in trying to like be responsible with the information they're giving. They're not at all. But for the past like 100 years, people who study evolutionary theory have been trying to make sure people understand that this isn't, look, just because we're different in terms of biology doesn't mean that there's some sort of like essentialness to race or anything like that. So it's kind of an annoying topic.
Yeah, let me just quickly go and then let Steve go. The first thing I wanted to say is I would suggest that we concentrate a lot on the origin of the species and descent of man. To look at Darwin's evolving views of things, I suggest you read The Voyage of the Beagle, because in it he talks about the different peoples he met and how some of the things he saw shocked him and started to change his mind. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I want to say is Hogtie brought up how Christianity brings in racism, and you remember I mentioned the Irish and how they were considered an inferior race. Well, this was based on religious differences, because the Irish were Catholic, so of course they were inferior. So that part of it. To point out is that religion can be used for good, for bad. As far as like the slums of London go, the people who worked really, really hard to help the people in the slums of London, including creating London Hospital, were Christian. On the other hand, there were also Christians who felt that nothing for these poor, downtrodden, miserable folks, because after all, the Bible says, hey, the poor will be with us always, so you're actually kind of going against the Bible to help them. So you have these extremes in Christianity as well as everything. I'm done.
No, that's true. I definitely agree. I just want to point out real quick that Claim had been in the side for a few minutes before he kind of left his live feed. He's doing the persecution porn thing that we're having an echo chamber and that we're a bunch of bigots. And it's kind of funny because we gave the guy 6 or 7 hours in the last hangout. I mean, literally the whole hangout was taken away from Sokka's hangout, right? Because Sokka's supposed to be having a hangout on Halloween and doing ghost stories, and it ended up turning into flat Earth and conspiracy stuff because of Claim Your Inheritance. So for 6 hours, we gave him every ample opportunity to make a case for anything, right? He had the whole floor for 6-7 hours. And then when he comes in here and we ask him, stick to the topics. We don't want to hear the drama. Just address what's being talked about because you did it in the last hangout. When he's removed for that, all of a sudden it's like, okay, he's being persecuted against. And it's that kind of nonsense that it's really hard to deal with, right? I mean, it's just, you want to have an honest dialogue, right? Not everybody agrees with everybody. I mean, we don't agree with Ramin a few times, but Ramin gets plenty of time to talk. We'll let her talk. If she's talking about the topic, she can have as long as she wants to talk about the topic. That's what we're trying to do with Claim. He can have plenty of time to address the topics, but he wasn't. That was the problem.
That guy went on for way too long.
Yeah. I wanted to point out, I looked it up. Look up, if you want to know something about social Darwinism, look up Herbert Spencer, and I looked him up in Wikipedia. His major work, Progress, Its Law and Cause, 1857, was released 2 years before the publication of Darwin's On the Origin of Species, and First Principles was printed in 1860. And in The Social Organism from 1860, Spencer compares society to a living organism and argues, just as biological organisms evolve through natural selection, society evolves and increases in complexity through analogous processes. So that's kind of is involved in the origin of social Darwinism.
There's eugenics in I think the Talmud. Like the same kind of the strong will overcome the weak idea has been around for ever since some bigger person beat up a little person. It's not like it's not hard to see that people would confuse what's being said about fitness and evolutionary theory with just look, the strong's going to survive, and the reason why is because they're fitter in terms of like racial hygiene, which is just became worse and worse, especially around the turn of the century when people started learning more about or roughly learning more about genetics and stuff, when people wanted to use eugenics in some way. And a lot of the evolutionary theorists at the time were also really into eugenics at the time. It seems weird just to try and apologize for the fact that people like 100 years ago were racist idiots, because that's just what happened. It's not how
Well,
it is
and
now, and evolutionary theorists try to responsibly explain their research.
well,
That's a good point.
But by today's standards, though, wouldn't you say that Darwin, which probably would have been considered to be a radical liberal in his viewpoints of abolition? I mean, even if he had any kind of racist tendencies, it is definitely because of the times, right? He would not consider to be somebody who was in favor of racism or of slavery, of any of those things.
He's very
Right?
anti-slavery.
Yeah, so you have to put that into
And
perspective.
and part of that came from his trip on the Beagle, because when he started to see it in action, he was horrified. And when he started to meet people of different races, and by the way, he had met people of different races before he ever went. There was the fellow who taught him, I think, taxidermy. It was I've got to look it up. Was a black man. But when he started to see all these different people in all these different locations, it kind of shook him. But yeah, you're right. People have always been racist. That's nothing new. It was a very weird thing. And yes, Darwin's ideas were taken and grafted onto other ideas. Basically, social Darwinism has a multiple origin sources, and then we're used to people, to abuse them, to mistreat them. And eugenics, the same thing. Eugenics was a misguided attempt at the very best to try to figure out ways to make people better.
What I don't understand is why the philosophic or ethical implications or supposed implications of Darwinism in any way invalidate the theory.
Yeah, they shouldn't, but unfortunately, that's the way people wanna point to it. I mean, I think they're
to be off topic a little bit, but I do want to bring this up. It's not that it invalidates the theory. You start to wonder a little bit the source of it. And I'll give you an example. And I hate using Gandhi, but the guy, for all practical purposes, was like, you guys know, the whole peaceful resistance, that dynamic, wanted rights for his Indians, right, that were being marginalized by the British. But at the same time, when you look at his writings in South Africa, boy, was that guy a racist.
Yeah.
And so what starts to happen is, if you can connect the two and draw the conclusion, you just wonder, how could he see it for his group of people, but man, he couldn't see it for any other group of people that was being marginalized. So you really wonder, is it about the overall idea from a human perspective that no one should be treated that way, or is he really standing for is he doesn't want to be treated that way? One is less virtuous, and that's the old point. But when Jade came in and really clarified some of those things, and I'm glad that she did, that question of virtue had to be set aside because we can't really answer that question. So that's why that sort of thing comes up.
Well, even so, it doesn't necessarily invalidate any of.
No, but I think it's a valid question. It doesn't invalidate anything about biological evolution. No, it doesn't, or Darwin's theories. However, I think it's valid to discuss how any idea or concept has an effect on society.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a very valid thing to talk
Darwin's
about.
ideas.
Yeah, it's a very valid thing to talk about. But Helena in the live feed, brought it up earlier, and she said, even if Darwin was the greatest racist piece of shit on earth, it doesn't matter in regards to his writings, his theory, his hypothesis, his conjectures. Those things should be taken independently. Now, I agree that all these topics we're talking about, and that's why it's really infuriating when he seemed to realize we knew a little about these topics. And when something is like posted, like from Wiki, we know where it came from. We know whether it's from Descent of Man or Origin of Species. We're pretty familiar with that. And why we could have just jumped to say, look at Darwin was a racist. Let's say he was an outright racist. How does that affect Origin of Species? But I didn't want to take that shortcut, because I really wanted him to understand that Darwin wasn't racist. and then nothing in the book was racist. But we was like pulling teeth at that point.
If I may, for a brief moment, another way to present this is that Mahatma Gandhi, if you actually look into the history of him, well, he did a lot of good. He was also racist. Does that negate the good that he did? I'd say no.
No, and my understanding is his worst racist writings when he was much younger. Now, I don't know what he had to say on race when he was older. I honestly don't.
And that's another thing, is that people's views do change and evolve as they get older and get more life experience.
Right, and one of the prime examples.
I was making that point. I think we have a little bit of revisionist type culture. I don't know. When we see the movie, we think, "Oh my God, this is the greatest man that ever lived." When we really look at all of his works, my mouth dropped open.
Who, Darwin?
And it's just, you sound duplicitous. You sound
Gandhi.
Darwin?
Gandhi.
Gandhi.
Oh, Gandhi. Okay. Yeah.
But I mean,
Go
this
ahead.
is the thing.
Speaking for myself, I think Nehru got robbed by history.
Well, the thing is, whether you're talking about somebody like Gandhi or somebody like Darwin or what have you, I mean, you're talking about people that ultimately, like all of us, are to some degree or greater or lesser a product of our times. Now, even somebody that, like in the case of Darwin, who was an abolitionist, which was, fairly unusual and very progressive for his time, and viewed people differently than most of his peers, trying to get those ideas across, you're going to have to use the kind of linguistic narrative of that time period, even if you actually are very progressive in your viewpoints. But even being progressive, you're going to be progressive based upon the current society, not based upon the modern understanding.
I don't think there's agreement with that. At least not in this room right now.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I didn't hear most of that.
I don't think there's a disagreement with what Shadow just said, at least in this room right now.
Okay.
Yeah, but well into, the late 1700s, people were against slavery. That's the other issue. It's more like just like perpetuating latent, like horrible views, or it's just like you said, it's a sign of the times.
Wait.
I'm trying to think of. There's plenty of other people who, at the time, were, I guess, just as virtuous, just not as popular as Gandhi, who also didn't say horrible things about black people and stuff. This is like the, I don't know. This topic always kind of bugs me. No one in the past was a good person. No one ever. Thomas Jefferson, he raped his slaves. Everyone in the past was a douchebag.
Let's
this kind of hero worship makes
You can't say that. I think there were people in the past.
Please, let's just throw in the phrase "by modern standards" in your statement there.
Yeah.
Does that invalid? So you think that at the time, okay, it's fine to. I guess modern standards are to not rape slaves that you own. But
here's the reason that people bring this to the forefront and why it's so challenging. What a lot of times I hear in this community and others, especially like on media and television, they bring in someone who's an expert in one field. Say, in the case of Darwin, evolution or natural selection or whatever. And then he writes something about take another field. He gives his ideas on something else. And then we all look at him and say, well, this person says this about this topic. And so we give what they have to say more credence than we would any person on the street, because we know them in this other light. And so the reason that people bring up their negatives is, hold on a sec. If we can stay focused to their area of expertise, I'm glad with that. But the second that you start saying, well, Einstein said this about XYZ, it's kind of like, well, let's not even go there then. So that's
just an argument for authority.
Yeah, the argument for authority. Exactly. You're an authority. It does not mean that you're an authority in another.
And that's actually why James.
Example
I was going to say Jade's point about the Diaries of the Beagle is a brilliant example, because you can actually see when you read those diaries just how amazed he is by the diversity of people, and actually how amazing that their lifestyles were and what they were doing and how they were surviving. It was something that fascinated him, and that comes through, I think, from those diaries.
Yeah, and how horrified he was by slavery.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention something what Hermine said, that a shining example of what she said is a man named William Shockley. Don't know if you're familiar with William Shockley.
Oh, that rings a bell.
William Shockley was a genius. He was a physicist, a mathematician, an engineer, and he was a co-winner of the Nobel Prize for the invention of the transistor. William Shockley was also an idiot. Believed some races were better than others. Now, Shockley Shockley understood statistics from a mathematical point of view brilliantly. He didn't understand how those statistics are applied to human populations. So he looked at the statistics. It's clearly that there is a hierarchy here. Asians are better than whites, whites are better than blacks. And he would argue this over and over again. He hadn't a clue where these statistics came from, how they developed, about the position of poverty in generating these statistics. He was also biologically stupid, because he was one of the founders of the Genius Sperm Bank. These people who developed the Genius Sperm Bank felt that, well, we'll get all this genius sperm and women could be inseminated by the genius sperm and have genius children. It doesn't work that way. And they knew it didn't work that way back then. But because Shockley thought he fucking knew everything, he thought that would work. No, so yeah, Shockley is absolutely brilliant in certain areas, and in others.
The thing is, and what I was kind of trying to get to is that when you're looking at any historical character, any historical person, I should say, really what you have to judge them against to some degree is the understanding and the people of their time. Because understandings of things and what have you do change with cultural paradigms. Now, there are some historical figures that we, with our modern day understanding and morality, would look back and say, these people were absolutely terrible. But if you look at them against their peers at the time, they might be even more terrible than their peers, or they might be more virtuous. And this is really, to some degree, when you're dealing with historical characters, individuals at least, how you need to kind of gauge things. And we, a lot of times, tend not to do that.
I'd like you just keep that thought in mind when we do talk about Jesus of the Bible.
I try to, and it's hard sometimes, but I try to.
But I'm glad that you brought that up. I thank you.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the context of the time, because it is what is socially acceptable, which tends to define what we use as the foundation for law and morality. And it's going against that social expectation, which is, for me, one of the definitions of how you apply bravery, because it is going against the overwhelming view of the population that you're dealing with, which means you're effectively isolating yourself. So it does take courage to do that, speaking out. And Darwin, actually, again, is a good example. He got pilloried in society because of his views, because of what he brought up. When what he was bringing up was observation. He didn't really do it specifically from a religious context. And I'll let Jade correct me if I'm wrong on any of that. But it is, I think it's hard. But I also think that you can look back in history and you can say, okay, well, even by our standards, these people are examples of what we would expect good human people to do. And again, I'll put the last point in, which is just because people sometimes do shining example deeds doesn't make the whole of their life a perfect example. Everybody is flawed. And I think that's another aspect we have to look at. So, you can, the Thomas Jefferson example is a very good one, because he did do some things that were, from a humanity perspective, were amazing. But he also had those areas of exclusion, because of his social upbringing and his social station. He had too much money. He could afford to own other people, and he did.
I think that it's hard for me because the test for me of people is how they treat the least of us in any generation. So we
Agreed.
hold people because of their intellect to have such a high level, but there are people who maybe did not have the IQ, but just were generally better people, and that's all.
Well, I think it's also it's how we help each other. I mean, it's why, you know, I've always gone with the view that it's not where someone comes from that counts with me. It's what they do and what they say, and that's how, for me, how I define someone's character.
But at the same point, if you were to judge me on something that I said in, you know, my teens or 20s, it'd be far different than my viewpoint now that I'm in my 40s. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well, of course.
Of course, but it's an ongoing thing. It's like, you know, I've known, in fact, I used to work next door to a group of people, and all of them were deeply racist. And I found it really perturbing because I'm not, and I don't understand that point of view, and I don't understand why they have that point of view. So rather than running away, I sat down and I talked to them about it. You know, they all lived in East London, which tends to be quite a hotbed. They didn't like Asians. So I actually sat down with some, and one of the guys actually, you know, read some books I gave him about the British Empire, and especially about the Raj, and what we did to India, and why an awful lot of Indians and Pakistanis are now in the UK, and why they came over, and the fact that we invited an awful lot of them. And it totally changed his perspective, because he actually said, so you're telling me that we took probably the richest country on earth and took nearly all of its natural resources, and this is why a lot of people are moving, and they took advantage of the fact they were members of the Commonwealth. Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, you can't look at any culture without seeing horrible things within the history of that culture.
Oh, gotcha.
The biggest problem that we're having in the U.S. right now is movements within certain areas of the South and what have you to try to whitewash that. I live in Texas, and we're actually kind of a prime example where in the textbooks, they're trying to eliminate all references to slavery and make it sound like these were just workers that they brought from overseas. And I find that to be deplorable because
Indentured servants.
you have to learn from history or you're doomed to repeat it, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in the Santiago quote a lot. Santiana, rather, quote a lot.
But if you go to, I'm going to jump for a moment to the history of slavery in the U.S. and what have you, because it was pointed out earlier that, yes, religion has been used to justify many actions, but I don't think that's something inherent in any religion or necessarily inherent in any ideology. Whether you're going to cite something like religion or philosophy, or it doesn't really matter what you cite, technically speaking. The simple fact of the matter is that if somebody has a belief that's kind of aberrant or abhorrent to us or the rest of the culture, they will find a way to justify it. Now, in terms of the whole slavery thing, it wasn't just religion that was used for that. Yes, there might have been some people that tried to use ideas somewhat akin to Darwin's to try to justify that without really needing to understand the original source material. There were also, in terms of slavery, though, they went to psychology to try to find justifications and invented traptomania to explain why slaves ran away, instead of just saying, well, they're slaves, of course they want to get the fuck away, this sucks. But I mean, people will use whatever they can to justify their fucked up beliefs, and I just want to make sure that it's kind of denoted that we're not just singling out one kind of group or what have you, because yeah, people are good at coming up with bullshit ad hoc justifications for things.
Well, I lived in the West Indies for a while, and one of the best pieces of advice ever given to me was by a friend of mine's grandfather in Jamaica. And we're sitting up, sort of, drinking coffee and smoking dubious substances you tend to do out there. And he just turned to me and said, "You know what? There are some good people, there are some bad people. The trouble is telling one from the other."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to point out that although, religion had a lot to do with the development of slavery, it was also instrumental in ending slavery.
Yeah, that was running the Underground Railroad, wasn't
right,
it?
And whatever arguments you might make for why the Civil War was fought, one thing I point out to people is that the marching song of the North was the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And the men who marched along singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic really believed in those words. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And the very last line was, as he died to make men holy, to make men free. Now, in later years, when the war was over, that last line was changed to, as he died, meaning Christ, as he died to make men holy, let us live. But the Union soldiers who marched to that tune sang, as he died to make men holy, let us die. So I just wanted to point that out.
Wasn't
Well,
it the
like
Quakers that were kind of at the home
slavery
together?
and like cross. I mean, especially in Europe, a lot of people contend that it was actually just views of the Enlightenment. Like when people started talking about rights of citizens, that kind of stuff, changing their political perspective, it was those kinds of arguments that became more persuasive and actually started slavery being banned more and more, like in England and other in other countries in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, in Britain specifically, it was around 2 rebellions that really started to end the whole kind of feudal concept of society, and actually, obviously, again, started to get rid of slavery. And also, one threatened civil war, which never quite came off, but very closely did. And again, that was about rights and rights of the individual and rights of the individual to determine their own action. And again, you see in France with the revolution and just the horror of, the aristocracy, who generally were the people that owned other people, just being cut down left, right, and center. And even after, and again, once the revolution had gone through, the purge had gone through, that sort of liberty rights was again kind of maintained and, a very egalitarian. And I can do the same with Holland. Germany's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, but here in the United States, people
it makes sense that those views would also just influence people to reinterpret passages in the Bible that have been used well before, but it only around this specific time started being applied to concepts like slavery, like freedom for people and stuff.
Again, the whole sort of French Revolution, Jacobean movement, the other secret societies thing was what fed the baseline of enlightenment in the formation of the US and the Declaration of Independence and the rest of the shit.
I don't know if I want to go down secret society stuff, but I'm talking, ideas of John Locke and Rousseau, that kind of just enlightened.
Locke, Rousseau, Voltaire, Kant.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is I'm talking about people like the Beechers and the Stows and the Quakers and John Brown. That's what spurred the ending of slavery here in the United States.
And other great furniture makers besides.
I mean, John Brown was polarizing.
Yeah.
But, yes, but he was deliberately polarizing.
But he was making a statement. That was the whole point of his actions, which is why they were so extreme.
Right, exactly.
Because he was trying to show the dichotomy in the way that slaves were being treated compared to the white slave masters, and the fact that because again it's that classic case of the possessed outnumbering the possessors from the point of view of a class-based structure, and the fact that they can rise, they can defend themselves, they do have the right of self-determination, they just have to seize that right and get to a place where they can exercise it more freely. I think that's pretty much more on the money there, Jade. It's not it's a bit modern for my expertise.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But I mean, there were a lot of religious abolitionists. No one's going to disagree with that. It's just, I think that overwhelmingly it was just a shift in a thought about the rights of people in nations and stuff, that kind of thinking that became popular, especially around a time when a whole bunch of different new nations were being brought up, not just the US, but places all over Europe. You start having this dialogue about rights of people in a specific nation, and what you said, Druss, where people were like, okay, no more I can't say that word right now. No more king people and
Aristocracy.
Aristocrats.
I'm not going to be able to say it. None of that crap anymore. We need to try and
say
figure out
lords.
rights.
Yeah.
That kind of
lords
stuff.
and stuff.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, that's what.
It's actually interesting to me in our society now that it's frustrating that we keep going through these same cycles, but we still, like in the United States, we just have a different version of aristocracy. And with that, we keep putting down a group of people, but we define them differently. So instead of saying it should be the rights of people that live in your lands, we'll say, well, they're illegal. Or, well, they're Native Americans. And even though we had a treaty with them, we still want to cut through their land because we don't want to do it in Bismarck. So it's okay because they're Native Americans. Like, we can talk about this stuff, and I think it's great. But until we are actually consistently applying it, it's really, really frustrating because it's just history repeating itself with a different name every single time. Sorry, I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, and it does. And I've been watching what's happening in North Dakota, and I'm flashing back to my youth in the late 1960s and early 1970s, and to the way that anti-peaceful, anti-war by the police, beaten, assaulted. It's the same sort of thing. I've been watching the videos of the police attacking these peaceful protesters, and I swear you could put that with anti-war protesters in the 1960s. This extreme overreaction to people who are being peaceful. It's just why? I mean, why haven't we fucking grown up? It's just astonishing.
But it's again, it's about establishment. This again. I mean, because you see that whole thing of the abuse of people who are trying to protest peacefully or trying to exercise their right peacefully. The whole thing is, by attacking them, they can turn them into the aggressors. I know it sounds but that's the whole point, and it happened in the UK. Right. I mean, I had an accident where I got caught in what was called the poll tax riot. I was working at a theatre at the time, and I come out of the theatre into Trafalgar Square, and the whole of Trafalgar Square was basically cordoned off or kettled off. And they had 8,000 or 9,000 plus people in that square, and they're old people, young people, everything else. They were kept there. I was kept there for over 5 hours. I went all the way around saying, "Hey, I've just left work. Can I go home? I'll go to the next barrier." And I did. I circled that twice, saying, "I can't get out. Why can't I get out? You're not allowing my free movement." "Oh, well, we've got to keep people here because it's, just for their safety." They then charged them with horses and drove a car through the crowd, which provoked a huge reaction from the crowd who'd already been patient for 5 hours, and it erupted into a lot of violence. Then it was reported on the news media, and this is the bit that just horrified me. As look at these horrible, violent protesters, and oh gosh, their message must be so wrong. Was then the tactic that was then used, and it was the first time I really had doubts in the police as a force for good, as a service for good around me, and also it damaged my view of politics, which as a person in their early 20s is quite a heavy thing to do.
Yeah, see, I observed things like that myself. I observed a reporter who got frustrated because he couldn't get out at a protest at UCLA, and he drove his car into a group of protesters. Now, he wasn't driving fast, mind you. I think what he thought was, I'll drive slowly and they'll get out of my way. But it didn't work out that way. He drove a little faster, I think, than he intended. No one was really hurt. He stopped about 6 inches away from me. I was just like, oh my God. But what basically happened, fortunately, he drove into a group of young people, and they actually leapt on the hood of his car to get away from him, and other people pulled people away. I can remember one guy standing on the hood of his car, looking down at him through the windshield and screaming at him like, "What the bleep would you think you're doing?" That kind of thing. But it was protesters who made a line to protect him from people screaming at him to get him out of there. And then later, this was at the what was it? The faculty something or other at UCLA, and what they thought was that Mrs. Hearst, Patty Hearst's mother, who was head of the Regents of the California, that she and the Regents were supposed to be meeting, and people hated the Regents, and for good reason, but I'm not going to go into that. But there was like this wall that you couldn't see over, so some people stood on top of the car thinking and others were going, "Hey, good idea, can you see over the wall?" They're going, "No." Oh, somebody taller got up and said, "Let me see if I can see on the wall." Well, by the time you got 3 or 4 people on the roof of the car, it kind of collapsed, it pushed in, and they kind of jumped off like, "Oops, sorry about that." So the car ended up just sort of being an object sitting there, and as the protest, they weren't coming. The protest just sort of disappeared. People were just kind of sitting on the car and talking and stuff like that. It was just there. One of the campus cops came up and started talking to people, and it was all very, very mellow. As I left, I saw by the side of the building the riot squad from the LAPD all lined up. But they didn't do anything because whoever was in charge was smart enough to realize this was just a peaceful protest. We're here in case there's a problem, but, we're not going to do anything. News. Violent protesters attack reporter, destroying his car. No mention of the fact he drove his car into the people. I saw that happen so many times. I was an anti-war protester during the 1960s. I was at UCLA, late 1960s, early 1970s. And I was also involved with some of the student protests, which were nonviolent. But when you watched the same thing you were at on the news, it was completely different. It was like, well, where, sometimes when you had an anti-war protest, you had the monitors who wore green armbands. Monitors were there; they were volunteers to keep people from getting out of, having problems. You would have people who show up. One of the problems we often had is high school students who were really, really excited they were in a protest. They'd skip school and they join the protest. Well, they'd get a little out of hand, and the monitors would go up and tell them, "Okay, guys," tended to be high school students. So you'd have this peaceful protest. News, if someone got arrested for something, or someone was detained for a minute or something, all of a sudden it turned into a, violent protesters and did that. And you're sitting there going, but what? I don't know. We had a protest at UCLA. We're marching past where they're building part of the new medical center. And all the construction workers were sitting outside cheering us on. And yet you would think that the way the news reported it is that all the construction people, all the working class people hated the protesters. No, they didn't. The difference we have today is that people have freaking cameras. Everybody has cameras. And it makes it a lot harder for, them to tell their tales that aren't true, so to speak. But yeah, it's the same sort of thing. And like you, I became very cynical when I was in my late teens, early 20s, because I realized what I was seeing on the news was happening.
No, you're exactly right. I had a similar experience. I was a delegate for my precinct, my county, and my state. And I was also a Bernie Sanders supporter. And if you would have seen at each one of the state and county conventions how the Democratic or DNC establishment railroaded the Bernie supporters and how it got flipped in the media that the Bernie supporters were out of control and were using parliamentary procedure to try and disrupt the convention, I was shocked. I was like, that's how that spilled out? And so now when I listen to the news and they tell me that Trump supporters are blank, I can't believe them. And it's this real frustrating thing because I'm like, are they really racist? Are they really bigots? Or is just this the way that the media, for whatever reason, wants to spin them? I sadly enough, I used to think that the media was an ombudsman for we the people and our government. And now I'm just like, I don't even know what their purpose is.
They kind of were supposed to be. That was one of the initial intents when everything was kind of put into place. But around about the Reagan administration, when they started doing all the deregulation, Because previously, if you owned some kind of media outlet, whether it be TV or newsprint or what have you, there was a limit to how many one individual could hold to try to prevent somebody from being able to basically create a political dialogue to try and angle things this way or that. So, I mean, through the 70s and 80s, it wasn't that bad, but partway through the 80s, it started changing, and it changed quickly.
Well, I would argue it was bad during the 70s because you had the main news outlet that people got their news from were the big television networks.
I don't have experience prior to the 70s, so I can't speak to that. I just know that from, basically I watched over the course of my life it getting slowly worse and worse, and it seemed to accelerate exponentially after that deregulation was put into place.
Yeah, I would not doubt what you're saying, but I do have experience from the 70s, and it sucked back then too. But it's always been, since I think that the news media is not biased against any one group of people. I think they're like dogs on a scent. If the news story goes one way, that's the way they're going to go. Whatever gets them airtime is what they care about, not what's really true, but whatever gets them airtime. And
a lot of times, in trying to keep things balanced, they present some freaking harebrained ideas in order to try to report both sides. Yeah.
But what Hermione said, oh God, why do I keep doing that? Hermione. I'm sorry. I will eventually someday. Hermione. Sorry, Hermione. One of these days I'll get it straight.
Hermione.
But what she would about Trump supporters? Well, here's the way it goes. Racists support Trump. They do. We know that. We see that. That doesn't mean that all Trump supporters are racist. It doesn't work that way. Supporters are not racist. Probably the majority of them are not racist, or not terribly racist. We all probably have something in us. That's not what I mean by racist. I mean actual, honest racist. A lot of thugs support Trump. That does not mean are all thugs. I think a lot of very uninformed, uneducated people support Trump. But that doesn't mean that everyone who supports Trump is uninformed and uneducated. There are people who support Trump because they visit. There are people who are deeply religious who really can't stand Trump's lack of morals. Nevertheless, they are in fear of the way the Supreme Court is going to go. I am also
candidates this time around are just so wretched, a lot of them.
Yeah, but I am also.
I already voted. I went down, I did the pre-vote thing, and I sat there and I went through the entire thing and went back to president, and I'm just staring at it and I'm like, I can't vote for any of these people, not in good conscience. I literally wrote in Cthulhu this year.
Okay, well, from my point of view, I'm concerned about the Supreme Court, so of course I voted for Hillary. Because we cannot have Trump.
Jill Stein, 2016.
But nevertheless, I understand where people cannot, vote for Hillary.
I just couldn't. I tried. I just couldn't.
I
thought I was ready, but I'm just like, I can't.
I'm not going to criticize you for that because I understand that. But yeah, see, the media. The thing is, because this is kind of the way it goes. Because there are racists who support Trump, and there are quite a few of them. They've made it very clear, hi, we're racist, we support Trump. On that, made that a big story, far bigger story than it needs to be. To me, it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of bleeping idiots over here who support Trump. If the media wanted to, if it was enough of the story, they could find the crazy people who support Hillary. There have been a few stories about that, but not too many. Beats up someone, or perhaps a Clinton supporter, that's going to get on the news just right away. If a Hillary supporter beats up someone, and maybe a Trump supporter, that's less likely to get on the news. It might in some places. Those cases really have anything to do with Trump or Hillary. They have to do with the fact that just about any candidate has people who are going to follow them for their own reasons, and some of those people are bleeping idiots. And that's, basically it.
I personally think it's a shame, actually, because I think Bernie Sanders would have been an amazing representative for the US.
Oh, I agree with that. On the other hand, I don't think he would have been able to work with Congress.
No, but I still
One
think
of my arguments against, yeah.
I still think internationally, he would have been an amazing.
Oh yes. I don't think he would have been a successful president, though. For the same reason, Carter didn't even have the support of his own party, even though he was a great man. And people talk about Carter's presidency as being a failure. They neglect to point. No, he wasn't a failure. The Democratic
at the time. Sorry.
I actually have to say Jimmy Carter is my favorite US president in my lifetime.
Yeah, mine on the Bernie Sanders wagon. I sympathized with them. I couldn't go that direction because I've been there before. I'm sure most of you are too young to remember Clean Gene McCarthy. So I've seen this sort of thing before, and I've seen that it doesn't work. So I was not, I mean, I appreciated, I thought, I really liked the fact that there was so much support for Bernie, because what happens is when you support, and as a matter of fact, if there are people out there who are still questioning who to vote for, you can write in Bernie Sanders. Because what happens is when, in American politics, when whoever is elected president, if they're not a complete idiot, and Hillary's not an idiot, Trump is, they are going to look at the way the nation swings. Obama did the same thing. Why do you think he appointed Hillary as Secretary of State, for one thing? Hillary is going to realize that there's a huge amount of support for Sanders, and she's going to take that into consideration. People also look at the third parties and how the third party vote goes. People, excuse me, a lot of people think it's useless voting for a third party. It's not, because the third party votes show which direction the nation is swinging. At one point, this was very important in a particular election. Not going to go into that because the third party vote showed that the nation was swinging very, very right wing. Today, we don't really have a right-wing third party to get these many votes, but we do have the Libertarian Party and we do the Green Party. So, for example, even if you don't like Jill Stein, but you want the country to move in a more liberal direction, more progressive direction, a vote for Jill Stein would
still send a
indicate
message.
It would send a message, and that so voting for third parties is not useless. It does send a message. But again, my point of view is I'm supremely worried about the Supreme Court. And so, yeah, I voted for Hillary. No problems there. She's a professional. She has been under more investigation than pretty much anyone ever. And they've pretty much come up with bupkis. So, you may think, yeah, she's terribly corrupt. Well, I don't see that. Yeah, corrupt. Yeah, well, she's a politician. Seriously, folks. It was Jesse Unruh, who was a great politician in the state of California. And at one point, he pretty much kind of ran California in a sense. Though he missed his spot. By the time Unruh ran for governor, the attitudes of people about backroom deals and the way politics work had moved forward. And he made a comment once about lobbyists. He said, and I'm probably not going to have it exactly right, but he said, if you can't drink their liquor, smoke their cigarettes, eat their food, screw their women, and vote against them, you don't belong in politics. And that's kind of the way politics works, whether we like it or not. I think right now, as I said, I'm concerned about the Supreme Court, but I think it's that people are concerned about the way this country is going. One of the things to do is to vote, in my point of view, the more progressive politicians in the future, to let your voice be known, to try to change politics. Politics has changed a lot from the days of Tricky Dicky. People complaining about politics today. I have pointed out to several people, try reading The Selling of the President, about the dirty tricks that good old Tricky Dicky, some of the dirty tricks that he did. And I could spend quite a long time telling you about some of the stuff he did, going way back to being involved in bringing Nazis into the country.
I don't know.
But that's because
I
it was just
think
pure politics.
I think the
That's
natural
what you did.
response to the way things are going in this country is to buy land in Canada.
Yeah, well, as I said, things, it's a mix. You think things are terrible now. They were terrible. They were worse then. That doesn't mean it's okay now.
Jade, hang
We
on a
need to
second.
change.
Jade, who is Tricky Dicky?
Richard Nixon.
Oh, okay. All right.
Can I
That's what he was
ask any Canadians in the room? Can they please annex Alaska back to Canada so we can talk about Anchorage babies?
Oh man, I'd be more than happy to go to. Yeah, Alaska would be fun too. There's good plots of land up there too.
I just like my Anchorage baby joke. That's what I was hoping people were going to get.
It works. Yeah. For me, it was a really weird sensation, though, just sitting there staring at that voting machine going, I can't. Looking at all four candidates going, I just can't do it. Couldn't bring myself to put a check next to any of them.
I find the whole thing really interesting because, I've worked in the US, I've worked in Canada, I've worked in Central and South America and over the Middle East and parts of Africa as well. Not, unfortunately, Cameroon, place I've always wanted to go to, but never managed to get there. And I do love the whole sort of political view, political opinion kind of thing, because it is, the way UK politics works at the moment, though it's getting more Americanized, is still quite different to the American model. And I find the American model really scary. It's just like, you're worried about the Supreme Court, and I'm thinking, my God, nobody on our Supreme Court, I don't even know what political views they would have or not, because that's not even part of the judiciary point of view here. And I find the fact that they're politicizing the judicial system, I find that horrifyingly concerning.
Oh, actually, sorry, I just saw a comment out in the chat. Yeah, the Dakota pipeline. Yeah, I have a lot of opinions about that.
Yeah.
The idea of the U.S. military defending corporate interests, I have a problem with.
I won't even go further back than that. I'm absolutely pissed off that Bismarck, North Dakota said that they don't want the pipeline because they're scared of what it will do with their water and potential and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's put it on the Native Americans.
Yep. Oh, and yeah, let's also, some of you don't know, and they're talking about the Dakota pipeline. Well, this also affects Iowa, and people in Iowa have been harassed and arrested because of this on her own land. What happened is there was a change in the law, and I forget exactly when. There's a concept of eminent domain, and the concept of eminent domain is necessary because we do need public works. And you do need to take private land for public works, but you're supposed to be able to compensate them, compensate people adequately, and so on and so forth. It's not very nice. I remember when the city of Anaheim was wider because of Disneyland, and they took people's front yards, absolutely devastating some people. Because they suddenly found themselves a few feet away from a giant boulevard. Okay, this was quite controversial at the time because people were saying, well, you're doing this for a private company. And the city's going, no, we're doing it because the private company forced us to do it because they're getting lots and lots of traffic. And that's an interesting question right there. However, the law has now been changed to the fact that eminent domain can be used to benefit a private company. Wrong. And those of you who are following our election this year and looking at the Dakota pipeline, once the election is over, I think everyone needs to contact their representative, get together in groups if you can, get this law changed back. This has been used to, and it's used mostly against, guess what? Minority folk in this country. They're not going to, this was part of the fuss after the California earthquake and the rebuilding of certain things, because again, where are you going to put the new freeway? Where in Oakland are you going to put it? Where do you think it's going to go? So, but of course, that was at least eminent domain. I mean, the regular old-fashioned kind.
Yeah, actually, Jade, if I can divert you for one moment here.
Sure, go ahead.
There's been a bit of a talk about the treaty with the native tribes, and I haven't had the opportunity to look into it. Have you checked into that at all? Because I'm not sure entirely what they're talking about with that.
Not too much, but I do know. Hang on just a second. I actually have this up in my feed. The Army Corps of Engineers confirms that there is no written easement for the Dakota Access Pipeline construction.
Oh, geez.
Does not have a written easement
So
from
they
the
don't even
agency
have
to
the
build.
rights?
Right, correct.
Oh my God.
Corps spokesman says that the Energy Transfer has filed the paperwork for the easement, but it's still under review. This is a quote. That's true. They don't have the easement that's required to install the segment that's across the Oahe project. And this is unquote, said Larry Chanis, Army Corps of Engineers.
That's amazing, because you need easement. Basically describes in American law your right of access to work on the project. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Cool.
And some of the problems in some of these cases, like the woman's land that they took in Iowa, they got an easement across her farm. Her farm she worked very hard for. Now I have friends who are farmers. I have people in my background who are farmers. Farming is very hard. Farmers not only have their farms, they have full-time jobs, or at least one member of the family has a full-time job, just to be able to support the farm. They farm because they love farming. So when you take a farmer's land, that's fucking serious. Some people might say, well, they only took a little bit of her land. Do you understand how narrow the profitability of farming is? To take a farmer's land is a serious thing. So rather than go around her land, had to go through it rather than go around it. And this is where the problem is. Why can't you go around it? Seriously, guys, you're driving trucks across your land. You can't go a few miles further. Instead, you're going to take an easement across a farm. And this sort of thing pisses me off. And this is why we need to have this law changed.
Yeah.
Private company, not for a government. No. If there's
Here's what I see. Oh, go ahead.
Huh? No, go ahead.
Here's what I see as the real problem. I want to go to the easement, and then I want to go to eminent domain. From an easement perspective, I see a real problem because when I see easements, you usually have to get through a county and a city and sometimes even a state, but not often a state. So since the area is owned by those native nations, I don't see that those sovereign places are going to give them an easement. And for us to say at any level, like they're not owned by any other county or city than what is Native American. So then we're saying that they don't have the rights to, I'm not even going to go there. When it goes to eminent domain, I want to play a different side of it. And this is why I'm so challenged by it. Let's go to the idea of Disneyland for a second. I do believe that it is a private institution. I got that. The problem is Disneyland does bring in a lot of freaking revenue, jobs, you name it, into the area. And that is a public concern. So what it's bouncing up against for me is the idea of private property and the idea of inter and intrastate commerce. So if you don't allow for the boulevard to be widened, what are you supposed to, and it's helping out a society, like you actually need it to be widened. Where I have an issue is eminent domain means you actually have to pay the value of what it's worth. So here's my question. Should it be the value of what it's worth today at that moment that they bought it? That to me is not fair. They should be paying, and this is where I think we'd be in the middle ground, the future value once the construction is done. So what happens is the person that owns it is actually honored and actually gets the benefit of having to lose their property and their space.
I mean, that's actually an awesome fucking idea.
That was.
Yeah.
And that was one of
Hats
the
off.
problems. That was one of the problems in Anaheim, was that most people felt that the people were not being paid properly for their land.
And part of that's because typically they pay based upon the current tax assessment value on the actual rolls.
Now, let me. Okay, yeah, you're right. They do. They don't pay adequately, and that's part of the problem. especially
Now, in many
on
cases, that tax assessment is based upon properties that were sold at a much lower rate years earlier,
Yeah.
and has nothing to do with the current economic conditions of the area or the current actual value if they were to get it reassessed.
Now,
I'll give you sort of like I'll just give you an interesting sort of example of how it sort of differs in the UK, because I think this is quite an interesting point. So obviously we're fairly limited on space and land, and when you build stuff, you're tending to be building across private land anyway. And again, we still have that same sort of right of public works are allowed to purchase private land. And it was the farming point that I found really interesting. So I live about 5 miles south of a big motorway. And that motorway is relatively new. It's built in the 70s. And when they went through all the farmland, because where I live is a very rural part of England, they not only had to buy the land, but they had to build bridges over the motorway to allow the cattle or the farm vehicles to have access to land, 'cause quite often it was splitting the farms in half. And it is one of the nice things of being able to drive down the M4 in England and in the evening, especially around this time of year, and you just watch cattle crossing bridges above you.
That is cool.
And that, but to me, that's equity. That's fair, and it's part of the responsibility of the highways agency is to maintain those bridges. So it's not just the fact that those bridges, and to me that's the civil way of being able to do that, because you're right. If you're a farm that's been in a family for generations, that land has very personal attachment to those people.
If I can sneak in right quick with something before it slips my mind again. In New Zealand, there's a plot of land, basically a river, a forest, what have you, can actually be granted personhood. In the U.S., only a company can. But well, a company doesn't actually live, but the land does. And it'd be interesting if we tried to get a movement going to allow, like native tribes and what have you, to be able to declare some of their sacred sites the same kind of personhood that's been allowed in New Zealand.
Yeah,
it's one of those kind of protections.
What I find is the fact that companies are defined as persons under law, because that's the same here.
Right,
and it's something I find weird.
The reason for that goes way back, and it's been misused.
It's about being able to sue, tax, lien,
right,
and exercise notices.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say, but I also want to bring up a contrast to this. When I lived in Orange County, not California, not the most delightful place to live for a lot of reasons. But when the Santa Ana College, which is a community college, had been expanding rapidly, so they needed to build a new parking lot. And so, using eminent domain, they, took the land. There were a bunch of houses there. They took this land, the houses. Now, the thing is, they actually adequately paid for the houses. There were very few complaints from the homeowners about what they got paid. But here's what the really cool part was. They didn't tear down the houses. They gave them away. All you had to do was come and get them. Now, that sounds kind of funny, but it's a lot cheaper to move a house than to build one.
$20,000 to move a house, and maybe, yeah, that's cool.
That's very cool. Plus the fact you're reusing. I'm big into what's called reuse, recycle.
Right,
and that's really cool.
This was a long time ago too. Before this was really good. They did one other thing that's really cool. These houses had been there for quite some time. And even before those houses, there were, there were some very old trees in that neighborhood. They designed the entire parking lot around the trees, and they kept the trees.
Oh, that's cool.
Now
I used to park.
Now you're appealing to my pagan tree huggerness.
I know. I used to park under one. Well, I took some classes in environmental science and stuff and electronics at the Santa Ana College, and I used to park under one of those trees that I was very fond of. Great big, huge, beautiful tree. And then they did have to cut down some trees, but the interesting thing was they apologized for it. All the really big trees and all the healthy trees. Some trees, unfortunately, I think there was one that everybody wanted to keep, but it turned out not to be healthy. But I thought that was kind of funny. Most of the time you see people just run roughshod over the environment like that. But Santa Ana kept the trees and they designed the parking lot around them. I thought that was so cool. On top of giving away the houses. I mean, wow. That's the way to do things.
The only thing they could have done better is taken that wood and reused it for for a good purpose, rather than just burning it or logging it.
I have no idea what they did with the wood. That's interesting. I don't know.
Because I mean, again, it's I suppose part of my issue is the amount we waste as society.
Yeah.
And I get frowned upon because I don't drive a car. I get the bus everywhere. Because I live in a place that does have public infrastructure. I know it's more difficult in the US, and I did have transport when I lived out there. But everything I do is to kind of say, okay, I've got a minimal carbon footprint. I'm trying not to use resources. Most of my computers actually run off solar because I collect solar and store it in batteries, and that tends to power my IT side of life. And when I get rid, when a computer comes to end of life for me, I try and recycle as much of it as I can, and I actually work with IT, and part of what I do is work with IT recycling and what's called asset management. So I go to big companies and I say, okay, look, don't just chuck this stuff out. Don't just give it to someone to send it to India for landfill. We can actually get you money back for some of this stuff. You don't just have to pay for someone to come and collect it. We can actually turn this maybe not into a fully profit revenue scheme, but a scheme that's going to defray a lot of those costs, because you obviously have to put it in a business language perspective. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing the amount of uptake I've kind of had with that around my local area, especially within education and government, because again, they're getting much greener in their views. They're getting much more, yes, this is sensible, but it's also something they can again market back to their users and their people about the amount they're recycling and the efforts they're taking. And I'm starting to see that actually slowly feed into sort of larger businesses. And that's one of my real hopes, is the fact that, the more we can recycle, the more we can reuse, rather than just, as I say, send it out to a third world country to have people burn it and then kids pick through the fire to pick out the precious metals.
And one of the interesting things, if you go to the Silicon Valley, it turned out to be kind of shocking from some people from the East Coast when they came here to visit, is that one of the reasons that most of the computer companies call themselves campuses is because they're gorgeously landscaped. Lots and lots of trees, lots and lots of... I worked at Seagate for over 20 years, and this little road and over this little bridge and down a little ways, and there's a little cul-de-sac, and we're tucked along a creek with and things like that. And it's very, very green, very, very cool.
So I used to do quite a lot of work out of Del Mar in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same there. We had a big 5 office block building campus, all perfectly manicured. And I thought, wow, San Diego is so beautiful and green. And then, one of my colleagues took me to his home, which is just sort of outside San Diego up into the mountains. And I thought, wow, this looks like scrub desert land. And it was really kind of weird. And then I realized how artificial that environment was until you got down sort of the Pacific coast. And then obviously it was, much more natural there.
Well, that's San Diego. I worked in Scotts Valley, which is in the mountains, the redwood-covered mountains. So that's a little different here. I have a little, although I'm in a little tiny valley, which is not in the mountains. The mountains are not far away from me, though. I have a little redwood grove in my backyard.
Oh.
Actually planted here.
Jade?
Yeah?
We're going far afield here.
Oh, this is still nice. It's a conversation.
I know it's kind of going organic.
You've got to realize that Amin and myself and Steve just spent nearly 6 hours for me, about 6 hours in a conversation with a gentleman with challenging views.
Gentleman's an interesting term there, but in any case, I want to pull it back towards the pipeline for a moment, because I tend to get most of my news online, and I was wondering how much coverage the actual protests and the response to them has gotten on the more major media outlets.
Not enough. As a matter of fact, the protesters are now protesting CNN for not covering it.
And I'd like to say they just started picking it up in this last week before Clinton's new email thing. And I have to say, I'm once again disgusted at our media. I'm so disgusted, it makes me want to cry. Like, I'm so emotional about this. I don't know why. There's a couple things I've seen go on that's so frustrating. There's people up there that I know that I'm sending stuff with, whatever, to go help, the minimal that I can. And they are doing live feeds on Facebook, and Facebook is shutting off their live feeds left and right. Okay, so we're not even, like, this is supposed to be an opportunity for democratized media, and Facebook put out this live feed where anybody can be a broadcaster, and the second you start broadcasting, within 5 minutes your feed is shut down on Facebook.
One of the heads of one of the online media sources that you can actually find on YouTube, it's called Democracy Now. One of the women from there was there covering the protest, and they arrested her and pressed charges that for like some kind of weird ass conspiracy, whatever the hell, that would have given her 45 years in jail. And she's like, I'm a reporter. What are you talking about? I'm just here to report.
Well, that was Amy Goodman.
Yes, it was.
That. Well, is everyone with a camera a reporter? That was the response.
Well, that's part of the problem. So then what you have on the news is, I think it's the first time since the civil rights in the 60s where people, and I could be wrong with this, but it's the first time in a long time where they're sicking dogs on people. If you look at, everyone's peacefully protested, like, and it's really frustrating because we have everything that happened in Oregon where people are like outfitted in rifles and everything else. These guys are peaceful protesting. You know what they started doing? They actually brought out horses on these people. Started trampling them with horses. They are in riot gear. They are with tanks. You want to talk about the militarization of our blank force? This is it in living color, and it should disgust every single American. It's
disgusts me. And did you know that they shot 2 horses belonging to the protesters, killing one?
And horses are expensive.
Yes. Well, not only that, they're very important to these are native peoples. These are very important to them. There is one video I saw, and this shows you how bad this is.
They shot one horse underneath that the boy was riding. A 15-year-old boy was riding the horse, and they shot him from under him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
No excuse for that whatsoever. There's one video I saw, and this just shows you how amazing and how out of control it is. There is a woman there. I don't know if she's a resident of the area or whatever, but she's against the protesters. She had her dog. She was sicking her dog on the protesters.
Oh.
She stood by and did nothing. So an anti-protester, I guess you could call it, was sicking her dog on the protester, and they were running from the dog, and she's laughing and telling him to go, go get them. And the police did nothing.
However, I'm willing to bet if one of the protesters stopped, turned around, and slugged the dog, he'd be arrested for it.
Oh yeah, this
is the punchline of it all.
Yeah. But of course that wasn't on the news. I'm getting a lot of the videos I'm finding are from alternate news sources online, and they're showing the video.
Really pertinent ones. I mean, the thing is, what really got the civil rights movement going back in the day was them going out there, and I believe it was MLK's statement of "We will pack the jails." I mean, that's really what that was kind of the turning point, I think, on some levels in that particular movement. And in this, if you don't have the media sitting there watching you, if you don't have any press, then it never happened as far as the greater population is concerned.
Yes, even though there are videos all over the internet, groups, various different online news sources. But
if you don't know what's happening, you don't know to look for them. That's the issue. Yeah,
right,
that's where the major comes in.
Major news sources, where's ABC and NBC and CBS? Well, I kind of don't expect Fox to be out there. But where's CNN? Where's MSNBC? Where are these people? They aren't there. It's all the indie news sources, the people who have their boots on the ground there and who are taking these videos, and they're putting them online or getting them from just people who are there. And
there was actually a group that went to Hillary headquarters with a letter for her, and neither the security guard nor the secretary would even take their letter. They later
that's
issued a
bad.
statement, and that's part of why when I was sitting there in that voting booth, I mean, I had myself psyched up, so to speak, to the point that I'm like, okay, I can vote for Hillary, I can do it. But the memory of her not even taking the message and the bullshit response they issued hours later, which was basically, yeah, sure, well, you know, we'll respect the protesters as long as they get the fuck out of the way, is basically what the translation was. I was so disgusted by that I just couldn't fucking do it.
Now I can understand the presidential candidates not getting involved in this, because to them at this point it's a side issue. No matter how important it is, it's a side issue. I want to know what the hell Obama's doing about it. That's where I've had the bigger problem.
Oh, dude,
I understand.
He's like, this is the worst job I've ever had. I'm almost out.
Yeah, but the point is, he is almost out, so it doesn't make any difference what he does. He could say something. I understand that the people running for president are trying to, you know, not get too involved in a controversial side issue this close to the election. I understand that. I don't like it. I understand it.
But there's a good number that during like the last year will sit there and really start letting people know how they really feel about things, because what does it matter at that point?
Right, and that's why I want to know why Obama's not doing it, because he is almost on the way out. So what? Maybe he's holding back because he doesn't want to influence the election. I don't know. I'm really interested in what happens after the election. I want to know what these people are going to do, especially Obama, the day after the election, because I think that will be very telling.
Well, I think the day after the election, it depends on who wins, because I'm really afraid.
Yeah.
I'm really afraid if Trump doesn't win, there's some people, like I told my kids, stay in the house for a week or two after the election.
Yeah.
They might pick you up. You might get lynched. You might get, I mean, that's how crazy it is.
Oh, yeah. Did you hear about the guy at the hockey game?
No.
Who showed up? See, the problem is that, well, first Obama's presidency and now Trump running has brought out every freaking racist in this country. Now, the good part about that is all of these people who tried to say for years and years that, oh, there really isn't a race problem in this country. Well, guess what? There is. A guy showed up at a hockey game wearing a Obama mask and, you know, black and white striped prison outfit and a noose around his neck. That was his Halloween costume.
Oh, wow.
They stopped the game and made him take it off. But the fact that someone thought that they could go out in public like that goes to show you the tenor of the times and how scary it is. There's another guy who has a big Trump sign in his yard. You know what his Halloween decorations were?
Yeah, bunch of nooses. I saw that one.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 black people hanging from a tree.
Lovely.
This is what this election has brought out. But it started with Obama's presidency. And not because of anything Obama did, simply because melanin in his skin. It started to bring out all the races, all this crap about his birth certificate being from Kenya. All of this is just racism from the get-go. And Trump is just, as I said, you can't say that all Trump supporters are racist, but you sure can say that his candidacy has brought out the races.
But the thing I'm finding concerning is that you're seeing also the rise in not just racism. You know, I think from dickheads on sort of the far right side, but you're also now seeing, I think, a more vocal racism from people like the Black Israelites, which I find equally as concerning, because, you know, unless people,
I think it's a natural response, though. I mean, the thing is, when you have one, I hate the word race. I think it's so stupid and misinformed. But at the same point, you see, quote, one race that's sitting there and being very bigoted and nasty towards another. And I think the natural response is for that group to respond in kind.
Mm. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's
I think you're always going to get that certain proportion that does. Yeah, I mean, and it's the same as it's a certain proportion of another group. And I just find the whole thing very disturbing. I find it really I mean, I think it's such a step backwards from where I hoped, we were going.
The
Yeah,
problem is it
it
kind of
seems like
decelerates to the point that people start assuming that every one of this other group is racist, and it's like, come on, just stop.
I've had that conversation. I've had someone call me horrific things, and I said, I don't understand why you're calling me that. I've never mistreated you. You don't know me. You don't know what my values are. You don't know who I am. But you're prepared to judge me in the same way that you're accusing, another group of judging you. And that's what I don't understand. I mean, again, going back to when I lived in Jamaica, I thought one of the coolest things to happen to me until someone actually explained what it meant was, I was walking down the road with some friends. We're going to a party, and a car full of very large Jamaican guys rode past, and one of them just looked at me and, "Hey, you're white," N-word. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. I'm finally accepted. I'm one of the crowd. And maybe I'm naive in a certain way. Or...
Yeah. Well,
and then someone explained what it meant. Went, oh, okay. Well,
And what you're saying is true, but it works the other way too.
Mm.
I'm pretty white. Blue eyes, fair skin, fair hair. And yet I've had these people in my life that I've met, just complete strangers, that automatically assume I think like them because I'm white.
Mm.
And it usually is around for example, someone parked wrong. I remember the last big time, and someone came out and says, "Well, those people, don't you know? I mean, don't you agree?" Kind of looking at me, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" I realized what she meant was Mexicans. They don't know how to park. So we've got a huge parking lot, right? Parked poorly. And as it turned out, the reason the car was parked that way is the people had run into the laundromat to pick up their stuff and run back out. They weren't like parked there for hours. Or they just pulled up, parked, and yeah, they did a shitty parking job. Took up 2 places to run in and get their stuff and run back out. That was it. But these. I was thinking, what people? Oh, the Mexicans. And I was like, what makes you think that I would? Oh, that's right, we're both white. You automatically think that because I kind of look like you, I'm gonna think like you.
Mm.
I've had this happen before. I had somebody once try to recruit me to join their little group out in the woods.
Okay.
I'm not kidding.
But it was it was one of the things that I found quite scary when because I've been a pagan most of my life, and I never realized actually how much of a racist movement there was hiding underneath some of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that myself and quite a lot of people in the UK have fought back with very successfully, and literally ostracized those people out of groups for that kind of view, because we're an inclusive group. We're the weirdos. We're the hippies.
Pagans are usually cool. They don't care what you believe. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, most pagans I've met are just super cool.
Yeah, there's a very sort of far right movement. I mean, especially around sort of the Wotan kind of Nordic.
Yeah, we have that in the prisons here. And I don't know what variety of pagan you are, but I've known pagans who follow gods who are totally ticked off. Nutters are very popular in some of our prisons here, and I can't think of what they call themselves. So the right wing nutter, but yeah, there's sort of this Nordic pride kind of thing that they do, and it really ticks off a lot of the pagans who get so mad at this.
Wasn't paying attention. Sorry, let me get Adventist in here.
Oh, actually, good point.
At one time, and this would.
Okay.
This would.
Sorry, bro.
This would really piss off. This would really piss off Fiona. She knew it. I don't know if she's listening or not. But at one time, a group of races that they used the term Scottish as a code word for races.
Yeah.
Because there were these sort of like Celtic pride, and of course, being of Irish ancestry, I find that really offensive too. But that's
Well,
the way they, you know.
I still remember asking questions. You know, when I was traveling to London with some of my family, saying, why have all these hotels or all these bed and breakfasts got no dogs, no blacks, no Irish in that specific order? It tended to be the sort of the way things were listed.
Yeah.
And that was a start of a very long conversation with my mother, who was sort of saying, well, some people have really, really fucked up, stupid views.
I'm going to
coming along
sneak
to
in
that.
here for 1 second if I can. Steve, Sokka, either you guys still there?
Steve will be asleep.
I think I
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think-
absconded with his hangout a while ago.
That's okay. I think he's asleep, so I think that's okay. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go soon. Does anybody else have mods apart from me?
I do.
Okay.
Coolio. Just don't want to leave everybody in the lurch. There's nothing worse coming into a hangout and no one can broadcast you. Apart from the guy that's asleep.
Yeah, there is that.
I'm just going to say, really nice talking to you all guys tonight. Thank you very much
you
for listening.
too. Yeah.
And it's getting towards 7 o'clock, so it's time for showers, getting kids ready for bed, and preparing myself for the slog of work that is tomorrow.
Have fun.
I will. And I mean, I really, really liked your point about equitable purchase of property for necessity. I think I'm going to steal that if you don't mind.
I hope you do. And I am so jealous because I miss the days of getting kids ready for bed. So definitely enjoy it. They grew up too fast.
Oh well, mine are 9, 9, and 12, so they're not that young. But they still need prodding.
Got it.
Time to get cleaned up, but I don't need a shower. Yes, you do need a
Well,
shower.
mine's still an age to be somewhat reminiscent of. 12, not as much because that's almost teen years.
I have to say, my eldest is so ridiculously good it's untrue. He looks at the Peggy rating on anything before he'll play it or watch it. And I was trying to persuade him to watch Guardians of the Galaxy when it came out. And he was still 11 at the time. And he said, I can't watch that. It's Peggy 12. And I said, it's okay. I'm saying it's right. No, I will wait till my birthday. So we watched it on his birthday as a special treat. But I am really worried because he's too good. Surely this is the stage I should be chastising him for all the things he does wrong, not trying to get him to do things that he sees as wrong. But anyway, guys, thank you. Speak soon.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Of course, I really want to wake up Sokka because if he ends up doing that, story hangout thing, I'd love to be in on it. Just want to make sure if he ends up doing one to invite me. It's a shame that the last attempt at that kind of got ruined. That would have been fun.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, they were doing a Halloween themed, tell scary stories kind of hangout, and I would have loved to have been in on that. And I saw that came up earlier. Then this came up to replace it after apparently the last hangout got kind of.
Yeah, the last one got thrown off way too quick.
Yeah, if you end up trying another one, let me know, man, because I'd love to be in on that shit.
All right.
Anyway, now that I've derailed the conversation,
Yeah, I know.
I was going to ask if the folks out in chat world had another topic for us. Dun, probably not. I don't know.
I didn't hear what you guys had to say about the pipeline, but I had to take a call.
No, go ahead, please.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Let me.
Okay, well, we have no comments from externals, so I guess we'll have to invent something.
Yeah, so.
I don't want to descend back into the insanity from earlier. Of course, while the hangout was going on, I picked like 3 different people in the hangout, and I was sitting there sending random things that, you know, it's like, for example, when the references to, you know, like language developing, I'm like, because Koine Greek was actually a spoken language that later they developed the lettering and what have you to go with it. It didn't start off as a written language. It was a spoken language, which is part of why it was so imprecise. Because it was spoken converted to text as opposed to text that that was also spoken.
Can I go back to something that the claim guy said today?
Yeah, sure.
Off limits. Okay. The reason I was saying that you guys were getting played and punked is because I believe that that type of behavior that he was showing, well, I think you have to, I think you should listen to people in that sort of dynamic. I think that the behavior that him and Dionysus and certain types like that, even Iron, show often is truly the definition of trolling. And this is the only place I wanted to bring this to. We were having a conversation about things that were scaring us, right? Haunted houses, the current presidency or election in the United States, whatever that was really freaking. And what certain people have the ability to do, and I don't even think they know that they're doing it, is they change the direction of the conversation, and they do it in such a way that it creates, it elevates moods, and it creates disharmony. I don't know what to call it, but it's the definition really essentially of trolling when you're trying to elicit a reaction. And so what he did over the course of, and you really had to see it, the few hours, but some of the best. And then you're going to allow somebody to take over the hangout, whatever, you kind of have to listen to them at that point. You do have to let them speak. You do have to whatever, even though you know you're getting punked. And so that's where I get frustrated with the personality type that no matter what we're talking about, they're going to bring it into conspiracy. They're going to bring it into race. They're going to bring it into whatever their agenda was. And then we're all just in that place. And so that's what I wanted to bring up that I was frustrated with.
I understand completely. I mean, back in the early days when I was running the Insomnia Shuffle, we'd go in there and, you know, we'd have some people bring their topics and we'd talk about them here and there and what have you. But very quickly, it kind of changed and started evolving, and I started having to put in rules there in terms of what could and couldn't be discussed and try to keep things within certain parameters. And when somebody tried to go outside of that, we'd have to shut them down. Now, it was really hard to keep somebody from completely derailing a hangout. And, you know, we, for example, there was this one day, because it isn't just the trolls, so to speak, that you have to worry about. There was this one day, for example, that we're sitting there, we're talking about the writing processes and characterization and this kind of stuff. And in comes Jade with talking about the latest science book she read, and we couldn't get it back on topic. So even somebody like Jade can come in and completely derail a hangout. And this is something I pick on her periodically because it so frustrates me, because it was a really good conversation, but she had to talk about her latest thing, and people will get that bee in their bonnet sometimes. And it's not always some kind of deliberate trolling. It's just this is what they want to talk about at that moment. And who's Emil? I don't know Emil.
I don't know either.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, 13 has a way of shutting me down. It's very polite.
Yeah, I say shut the fuck up, Jade.
No, he types to the live chat or says, "Hey Jade, do you remember that card in Drunk Bears?"
Oh yeah, that one.
Well, just he doesn't know his S's either. It could be that Emil is claim.
Yeah, let's give him a shot, I guess.
Introduce yourself, Emil. You have to unmute yourself.
Apparently not.
Okay, but yeah, for my 2 cents with this whole thing is, I know about the whole 8-hour thing, but I sometimes think it's just best to let people hoist themselves on their own petard. But I also know that there are people who are so obsessed with things like I've been mistreated, I've been mistreated, I've been mistreated, spew, they'll get it out of their system, and then maybe you can have a conversation. Now, maybe that wasn't possible with this particular individual.
No, Steve
oops.
didn't leave. Actually, he was sniped by Emil, so I threw Emil the fuck out.
Oh, okay.
Oh, fuck no. Fuck
end.
no.
The hangout's over. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, it is.
I can't believe I just said that. Oh gosh.
Well, I just the only thing I want to say is I don't know if Emil's watching, but thank you for proving that you're about what 8 years old mentally, Emil. You know, again, thank you for proving that. I have to wonder what sort of jollies someone gets out of sniping a hangout
So
like this.
that added back in, Steve, but I don't know if he'll be able to get back in.
Oh,
Yeah.
we are still live. We are still live.
We are for the moment.
Yeah, but we've got like 8 minutes, so I don't. Yeah, it's But
No.
yeah, this sniping, just children.
Incidentally,
how did
as
you get in?
well, I don't know how he got the link, but he joined in, and the moment he was displayed in the Hangout, he started sniping. So, I actually had my finger over the eject button, waiting to eject him. So, the moment that I saw somebody leave suddenly, I'm like, okay, fuck this shit, and threw him out because he hadn't spoken yet. And then glanced to the other side, and yeah, sure enough. But in any case, well, I have a moment. I'm making a quick announcement. I have renewed my corporate account, which allows you to eject people from what's essentially an off-air hangout. And as of next month, I'm going to be reactivating the moderator account, which I'm going to be making available to several people so that people can have hangouts streamed through things like XSplit or what have you, and still have the ability to mute people and eject them from the room, because it uses a very similar interface with this, although you cannot actually share mods. So I will be reactivating that account and making it to varied broadcasters, Steve included, so that they actually can approve people prior to them joining, as well as being able to eject them from Hangouts, so we can circumvent this whole snipe thing, because there's no external chat for those Hangouts. Because fuck this.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to know.
I didn't know them, so I couldn't broadcast them, but unbelievable.
Yeah, it happens. We'll be off air in a couple moments, but yeah, that's going to. I'm hoping to implement that. I'm gonna just have to teach Steve how to use XSplit.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what the snipers intend to accomplish, because all someone has to do is start a new to hang out. I mean, MK kind of said that.
That's the point of me enabling the corporate thing. They won't be able. They won't be able to snipe and beat out. It won't be necessary to start a new hangout, and we can run them longer if we want.
Mm-hmm. Right. But I said, mentioned that when he made like a letter to his sniper and said, hey, sort of like, well, cool if that's your thing, but I can just start another hangout, and that. And then, like,
Jade, you were breaking up. You were breaking up.
Sorry, Nessa. Okay, that happens.
We're also about to run out of time. So for those that did watch, thanks for watching on behalf of Steve McRae. And remember, patron, yada yada yada. I'm sure being the end of the month, he'd be wanting to have that promoted before it stops.
Yes. If you can and you like what Steve does, please become a Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't like what Steve does, but you like listening. Patreon or whatever the hell it is. Just do it.
Let me see if I can invite you. Hannah, we're about to be offline, but fuck it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm going to go. I've got stuff to do anyway, so I was thinking of going in a few minutes anyway.
Do you want to start a new hangout or not?
There you go.
Yeah, there's it's off air pretty much.
Yeah. But I can see about inviting her anyway, just in case she wants to BS offline.
Oh,
okay, that's a good point.
Give me a second here.
But anyway, I'm gonna stick around. Freddie, don't you dare get in there! I just fed you. Stop it. That is pepperoni. It's